Hey everyone, happy Friday and welcome to TPUSA Live. I'm Jon Root, sitting next to you.
Morgan Zegers, I'm the host of Freedom Papers, a new episode every Monday through Turning Point.
Oh, I can't wait for that, but we got to tell you what's going on with today's show. Today's live stream, we got a lot of great content for you, and obviously we're going to start out with Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec.
Oh my gosh, I mean, John, China, communist China is one of the most important subjects that every American should be knowing about, and a very interesting thing came out. It turns out U.S. Special Forces have been secretly training Taiwan's military for quite some time now, so that is really big news. Jack's got to break it down for us.
Yeah, he has so many great resources, so many great connections, so he'll give you a full breakdown of what's going on there. Also, President Biden continues the campaign against the unvaccinated.
It's very concerning, and now with all of these new revelations coming about what is inside of the vaccinations, especially from Pfizer, a lot is going to go down.
He also gives his breakdown of the way forward on abortion testing, because we've been hearing some really sketchy things just like you brought up.
Exactly. I mean, for me as a woman, I always am talking about being pro-life and how proud I am of that, and this specifically for people trying to claim religious exemption with the vaccination, they are going to be righteous in this, I have a feeling.
Now you got that and so much more on Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. Right after, I'm going to sit on the couch with some incredible guests, including this person right here, the host of Freedom Papers. We got to bring it up again. Morgan Zegers is going to be there.
I can't wait.
We also got Aram Choe. He's a California law enforcement officer, also a TPUSA ambassador. We also got TPUSA ambassador and political consultant Colton Duncan's going to be with us again.
Well, I know that we've got to talk about something, John. It's what's going on in Australia. Today, I woke up to a picture. People always send me this kind of stuff, like the commies on the rise around the world. And so I saw these pictures of these military-esque, like medical vehicles that look super scary, and they are going out into all of Australia. A little sketchy.
Yeah, they're in riot gear, and most of that is happening in Victoria, in the southern part of Australia, in Melbourne. I know this stuff because I have a family member that's out there, so
I'm excited to hear
I'm
about
definitely
it.
going to give my take about that. It's near and dear to my heart when we talk about Australia. Also, we're going to go over real deal or fake news, one of our favorite games.
Oh, this is the one where I guess that everything is real deal, because it's all just that crazy. I love Babylon Bee, and I'm really good at telling what is a Babylon Bee headline, because they have a specific way of writing.
I'll be the judge of that a little bit.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
Also, this morning, President Biden ran about an hour late for his September jobs report. We're going to break that down as well.
Why am I not surprised? I mean, he's late. He's fallen over. All these things.
President Joe, you got to wake up from your nap. We got to give them the jobs report, and it was abysmal. We're going to break that down for you. Also, weekly shows. We got the Spillover with Alex Clark. It's going to be great. She's going to sit down with former state and federal prosecutor Francey Hakes to talk about crimes against children, the failures of the FBI, Gabby Petito, and so much more. Yeah,
well, I like Alex's description of Spillover being like the more mature older sister of POPlitics. I have to watch POPlitics because I'm a grandma and I've got to learn about all the pop culture stuff. Alex does it for me. But the Spillover is just fascinating. A lot of like true crime things and very interesting. One of my favorite new podcasts.
I think it's so fun because we get to see a different side of Alex too.
Yeah,
like
she's good at hosting.
She's very good.
She's good at like asking really poignant questions and very intense. And so the editing of the highlights is one of my favorite things because she's really good at using her voice to like add the suspense.
Yeah, like
it's a talent.
It's funny. We had her on yesterday, and she was talking about President Biden's anatomy, and then she can go have this really crazy, intense conversation with Francey Hakes. It's great, but make sure you check out the Spillover. Right after that, we got some more Alex Clark, POPlitics. She's going to cover and give you some updates on Call Her Daddy podcast from Barstool. Also, Jay Cutler's dating life that I'm sure you've been wondering about.
I mean, I like Jay Cutler because he's more conservative. He's like a country boy. I like that, and he's speaking out about his values. And then when it comes to Call Her Daddy, oh my gosh. Don't get me started. I think it's trash, and I'm glad that we have people like Alex Clark who can bring a more, let's just say, a better approach to reaching young women our age.
I completely agree. She's also going to share her Freak of the Week, and then now we need to tell you what we're doing this weekend. What I'm looking forward to the most is I love going to the movie theaters. That's one of the biggest bummers about the pandemic was movies were shut down. You couldn't go see new movies, but 007, No Time to Die is out now, and Daniel Craig is the best Bond. Don't at me.
Okay, I agree with that. Love that. I love 007, love those movies, and love the movie theaters. Gosh, John, we're killing the game here.
Anytime I bring up a movie and she says, oh, I've seen that, or I can relate to that.
That's shocking.
It's big time. What are you doing this weekend?
I really just love being in nature. I think because we work in like media and stuff, I'm always looking at screens. I hate that, and so when I don't have to be, I am out and about away from my phone. Obviously, I have it on me for safety, but I'm going to go on some hikes. Yeah,
before you go out on some hikes and have a great weekend, make sure you stick around for this entire live stream because you know coming up next, we got Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. We'll see you guys just a little bit later.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. Huge show today, a lot of stories. I know it's a Friday, but you got to stick with me. First up, the United States Special Forces, it has been confirmed, have been secretly training Taiwan's military on a covert mission that's been taking place since 2020. Next, Biden is continuing his campaign against unvaccinated Americans. Third, the way forward on abortion-tested products for the pro-life movement. I promised you that. And then finally, Trump tells 4 former aides to defy the unconstitutional January 6th committee subpoenas. All this and more ahead. Human Events Daily. All right, and just so everybody remembers, this show is powered by Turning Point USA, and I have to tell you, the America Fest is coming up. This is going to be the biggest event for America-loving patriots in the entire country. Where is it taking place? Phoenix, Arizona, December 18th to 21st. And folks, you have got to get your tickets before. If you've been to a Turning Point event before, and I've been to a lot of them, this is going to blow them all. Don't get me wrong, I love Turning Point events, but this is going to absolutely take the cake. And I asked them, I said, can you tell me who's going to be speaking? Can I let people know? I want to tell them. They said, we can't tell you, just say big name speakers and country stars, country singers. I said, come on, just let me tell, because they're really going to be, and they said, they won't let me say. They said they won't let me say who's speaking because it hasn't been announced yet. But let me just say, everyone, it is going to make you very happy when you hear who's coming out. So make sure, go to the website, get your America Fest tickets, because once they're gone, they're gone. Once they're gone, I can't help you. Don't come to me after they're gone and say, oh, Jack, can you get me in? I can't. When they're gone, they're gone. You've been told. You have to now go and get them on your own. So let's get into the stories. Today, first story up. This is absolutely huge. A secret operation that's been taking place since the Trump administration. U.S. Special Forces are training and have been training the Taiwanese military since 2020. Now, I want to give people an understanding of this because we have been conducting trainings with the Taiwanese military at the Special Forces level for several years now. Right. And those are typically called JSETs, Joint Combined Excellence Training. Right. And what that is interoperability training, best tips and practices from U.S. Special Forces to Taiwan. But it usually only lasts for like a week or two. It's not that long. It's less than 100 people. It's very small. This is something different. This is actual special operations training. And I want to go to humanevents.com, has the story up, and I'll tell you exactly the way that we put it there. So go to humanevents.com, get the full story. A U.S. Special Operations Unit and a contingent of the Marine Corps have been covertly working in Taiwan to train military forces, part of efforts to increase the island's defense system as potential Chinese aggression mounts. Members of the Special Operations Troops are conducting training for small units of Taiwan's ground forces. The Marines are working with local maritime forces on small boat training and have been doing so for at least a year. The deployment comes amid concerns over Taiwan's defense capabilities and China's recent threatening moves against the island. Indeed, Taiwan and U.S. have expressed concern over nearly 150 flights. We talked about the flights before entering Taiwanese airspace, and to give people an understanding of what the threat level is. So let me explain this as a former naval intel officer. This is unprecedented. Typically, these activities only take place, as I said before, through a limited time. It's a 2-week engagement. It's not something that's extended. It's not a long-term mission. This is the start of something new. What you're going to be preparing for, number one, is preventing Taiwan from having vulnerability to those Chinese attacks, a PLA attack that would come in the first waves or before the first wave of invasion, which of course would be infiltration and counter special operations. So what that means is you're going to be looking to fortify targets for preventing a special operations attack, or making sure that if you can identify any Chinese PLA special operators that are operating on that island of Taiwan. And I guarantee you they're already there. I guarantee, just common sense, folks. It's common sense. They speak the same language. They're going to be there, and they're going to infiltrate to try to take out what? Communications nodes. They're going to try to gum up relays. They're going to do cyber attacks. They're going to do everything they can prior to an actual kinetic invasion of Taiwan. The next thing you're going to see most likely is maritime militia coming across that Taiwan Strait in waves, or it's going to be a lot of numbers, followed, of course, by air, et cetera, et cetera. And so those aircraft, if they're looking for targets, if they're looking for strike targets, they have to put together what's called a strike package. What do they need for that? Coordinates. They have to know what type of building it is. They need targeting information. They have to figure out what type of munitions they want to use. So all of that will be done by these PLA, Special Operations Forces, and Intelligence Security Forces when they come onto the island prior to any engagements. That's exactly, I guarantee you, what the Taiwanese military is being trained to understand, but then also learning how to protect that island. You have to imagine the waters around the island of Taiwan are going to be dumped full of mines within the first few minutes of this engagement, certainly the first few hours, if something like this happens. Of course, we don't want it to happen. We want peace through strength. We want to maintain what's going on now, but because of the aggression of mainland China, we have to now support what's going on there. This is Silicon Valley West. The semiconductors, 92% of the high-powered, sophisticated semiconductors are on the island of Taiwan. Stay tuned. It's got more up ahead. Human Events Daily. In the book 1984, there is an element that the party, INGSOC, the English Socialist Party, uses to command their people's passions and to inflame the passions against the enemies of the state. And they call this 2 minutes hate. It's particularly targeting Emmanuel Goldstein, who's seen as the leader of the resistance. And for 2 minutes in every workplace, in every school, everywhere you are in the country, you have to stand down and listen to somebody come on air and give the 2 minutes hate against Emmanuel Goldstein and learn why he is such a threat to the country and how everyone will be killed and destroyed because Emmanuel Goldstein is out there and he hates everyone and he is the greatest threat to the nation, to Oceania, right? Having said that, listen to Joe Biden talk about the unvaccinated yesterday.
We're headed in the right direction if we keep our eye on the ball here. We still have a long way to go. The fact is, this has been a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Unvaccinated. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units. The unvaccinated patients are leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or in need of a cancer operation, and so much more because they can't get into the ICU, they can't get into the operating rooms. The unvaccinated also put our economy at risk because people are reluctant to go out. Think about this. Even in places where there is no restriction on going to restaurants and gyms and movie theaters, people are not going. And anywhere near the numbers because they're worried they're going to get sick.
So this is a prime example of a propaganda tactic, which is known as scapegoating. He knows that his numbers on COVID aren't what he promised. He knows that the situation isn't where he said it would be. He also knows, by the way, that people who have been vaccinated can also spread COVID. So he's just lying. But I want people to understand that it's beyond just, he knows he's lying. Well, he might not know, but the people who wrote his speech know. And what he's doing, it has nothing to do with science or medicine. What he's doing is inflaming the anger and the passion of his people, of his supporters against the unvaccinated. He is using them as a scapegoat for his own failures and to make people angry at them rather than look at this feckless leader and say, this has been his problem. He's the one who failed. He's the one who couldn't get this thing under control. And he's the one who won't use the science-based methods of simply saying that there are certain people that are greater risk to COVID because of comorbidities, because of immunodeficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we need to protect those people more than we protect healthy people and everyone else. It's really as simple as that. That's all you need to say, but he won't do that because his entire administration has wedded himself to this idea of 100% vaccination. But here's an interesting thing, speaking of percentages, that he himself has decided to do. So take a listen.
These requirements work. And as the Business Roundtable and others told me when I announced the first requirement, that encouraged businesses to feel they could come in and demand the same thing of their employees. More people are getting vaccinated. More lives are being saved. Let's be clear. When you see headlines and reports of mass firings and hundreds of people losing their jobs, look at the bigger story. I've spoken with Scott Kirby, CEO of United Airlines, who's here today. United went from 59% of their employees to 99% of their employees in less than 2 months after implementing the requirement. 99%.
So you caught that, right? Don't worry about the headline saying that we fired hundreds and thousands of people. Don't worry about all the people losing their jobs, because look at the fact that the numbers go from 59% to 99%. I'm like, this guy doesn't actually understand. 50 years in Washington, he doesn't understand how percentages work. Here's a meme from Grand Old Memes, GOM, that I think really kind of explains what's going on here, right? Of course you have up to almost 100% unvaccinated now because you fired all the vaccinated people, Joe. You fired them all. You made them lose their jobs. You made them lose their livelihoods. You kicked them out on the street. You're kicking them out of the military. You're talking about putting them through court martials and giving them a dishonorable discharge because they didn't want to take the vaccine for religious reasons, which we talked about. We're going to talk about again. But you say it doesn't matter because the numbers are going up. No, you idiot. You're juking the stats. Everyone can see that. If you fire the people that are unvaccinated, then obviously 100% will be vaccinated. It's like, this is why, by the way, people who can do math don't go to Washington, D.C. They go and they make money. They go into crypto. They go to stock market, whatever, right? They know that that's not how the world works. But if you go to stupid people in Washington, D.C. who don't know math and don't understand basic economics, right, they can get away with this because nobody sits down and actually challenges them on it. This is also why they don't teach math in schools anymore. Basic mathematical explanations or basic mathematical concepts. So you've got a guy who's up there demanding this, and keep in mind, right? You know, they say illegal immigrants live in the shadows. Well, are we going to get to the point where the unvaccinated have to live in the shadows, trading black market, cards around just so they can get on a bus, so they can get on an airplane? It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It is medical tyranny. They are doing all this in the name of medical tyranny. And for one, I'm absolutely not going to stand for it. I'm not going to stand for it, and neither should you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back talking more about this very serious issue. And since we were just talking about percentages in the last segment and how Joe Biden doesn't understand them, I wanted to remind you all that we do understand percentages. We understand math, and we actually support math, and we support STEM. And we also know that when percentages matter, that because you can save up to 66% off of your MyPillow.com order by utilizing promo code POSO. Support us, support Human Events Daily. Go there and support yourself, your family, and your own sleep. Upgrade your sleep system, MyPillow.com. Folks, I want to get into, again, continuing this story about the way forward when it comes to the pro-life movement on this issue of abortion-tested products. So let me first play this video, this latest update from Project Veritas confronting this vice president out of Pfizer over these statements, over these emails, and then we'll explain. Take a listen.
I'm a journalist for Project Veritas, and a whistleblower with Pfizer recently released your internal emails. And what I want to know is, why did you write an email saying that you would prefer we do not discuss fetal tissue being used in laboratory tests associated with the vaccine program?
Philip Dormitzer, Vice President, Chief Scientific Officer. These are not low-level people here. Copying Vanessa Gelman, we have an approved answer to this question, the question being about fetal tissue, which Vanessa can probably provide. HEK2932, what does that mean? HEK cells?
Human embryo kidney cells, and it was from experiment 293. From the perspective of corporate affairs, we want to avoid having the information on the fetal cell lines floating out there. We believe that the risk of communicating this right now outweighs any potential benefit that we could see, particularly with general members of the public who may take this information and use it in ways we may not want it out there.
Why would you lie to the American public?
Very connected with communications.
I'd like to talk to you right now since I'm with you. Should the American public trust Pfizer at this point, since a lot of whistleblowers have come out, and even we've exposed scientists saying that the antibodies are better than the vaccine itself?
So your antibodies are probably better at that point than the vaccination.
How can the American public trust you guys at this point, Phil? You don't want to give us any comment about that tonight, Phil? Phil, we expose everybody, just so you know, brother. Once again, we ask the questions, they run away. He did say we can contact his communications department, so that's what we'll do now, but that's how it goes. We ask the questions and they run. Who's next?
So the debate is absolutely raging when it comes to this issue. And I've seen so many people say, wait, hold on. This is testing on the products. It's not included in the products. There are other products out there that have been tested on this. Should we ban all those? Should we boycott all those? What is the way to go forward? This is, a crazy situation. It's a complicated situation. So I made a lot of phone calls to people about this last night. I've been praying on it. I've been reading about it, the different takes on it. And here's where I'm going to come down. Here's where I'm going to say the way forward for the pro-life movement. You got to understand, look at other movements that are out there that are being successful. The social justice movement doesn't care how long ago something was. They will talk about 1619 if they need to, because they want to right historic wrongs. That's where they're coming from as a moral movement. Vegans will not eat honey. They will go to the level of not eating honey and refraining from that because they do not want to benefit from that which is to them a moral wrong, right? The fact that it is an animal product. So you got to understand that when you're making a moral stance on something, number one, you have to take it to that level. But now also understand that we live in the real world. So here's the thing. If you want to boycott those products, and you can go and you can find lists of them, think of it as a fast. Think of it as giving up something as a fast, as penance, right? As penance in the here and now. But also look at it as a way to pressure these companies, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's food, whatever it is, to stop this practice, to stop this barbaric practice of testing products for people, right, on cells, tissue, et cetera, from aborted fetuses. We do not want to cooperate. We do not want to benefit from this. We do not want to comply as Christians and pro-lifers. If the pro-life movement is going to gain traction, they need to stand strong on this issue. They need to pressure these companies. They have to say enough is enough. And for those companies out there and the military and other institutions that say you don't deserve a religious exemption, let me just say this. Abortion is not compatible with the Christian religion. It's as simple as that. All right, one more segment coming at you, Human Events Daily. So this last segment, I had to step in with my old friend, Joy Reid, to see what she's up to. Now, many people don't remember this, but we do have a clip of me being thrown off of the Joy Reid show back in 2016. I have to look that up because that's kind of amazing. But yes, I was on a panel with Joy Reid and she threw me off her show in Philadelphia during the DNC. It's pretty amazing. But so I wanted to check out to see what she's up to see whether or not she's doing well and to see who she's talking about. Let's take a listen.
Let's say there are criminal referrals against, let's say Steve Bannon says he's not coming or Kash Patel says he's not showing up, and this criminal referral happens. Can you walk us through what that process looks like?
Well, I'm not certain that the chairman has decided specifically what we're going to do, but there's a process for getting criminal contempt that is turning the information over to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia and trying to get the Department of Justice to demand that these people appear in court and be jailed until the point at which they cooperate with the congressional subpoena. It could be civil contempt, or it also could be inherent contempt of Congress, where we design our own process for hauling these people in and perhaps fining them until they're willing to cooperate. But I don't know what makes them think they're better than anybody else in the country. All of the rest of us have to cooperate when we receive a subpoena. In fact, what makes them better than the hundreds of people who stormed the Capitol, broke the windows, and assaulted federal officers? Those people have had to comply. And so somehow they think they get some kind of magic immunity from Donald Trump. And I know that's a guy who has been surrounded by armies of lawyers for his entire life and acts with complete lawlessness and impunity, but even he has to face with the law which catches up with him. I mean, think about the Trump University case where they defrauded all those people. They ended up having to pay millions of dollars. Think about the House of Representatives twice impeaching Donald Trump. So the law is going to catch up with all of these people. And I think that they're just making a really bad mistake to cast their lot with Donald Trump, because in the final analysis, he will cut these people off. And they're going to be facing the law, and their families have to deal with the shame of the disrespect they're showing to the rule of law in the government of the United States.
Now look at this. They're telling you right up front in the first 30 seconds of that clip, Jamie Raskin, the guy who presided over the past two unconstitutional impeachments that went down in flames, by the way, they were complete failures, says that he wants to put people behind bars if they refuse to comply with the subpoenas for his new unconstitutional committee. Be very clear about this. Congress is not a law enforcement body. Congress is a legislative body. They are only allowed to issue subpoenas in furtherance of pursuing new legislation. But that's not what they're doing here. You cannot subpoena someone based on their activities that are protected under the First Amendment, which is, of course, the right to protest. The right to protest, by the way, in Washington, D.C. was enshrined by the liberal left during the Vietnam War. So this is your own laws that say this is legal for them to prepare a protest. They did not participate in any crimes that day. No one's accused of them of any crimes. And now Trump is coming out saying that he's asking his people that were in the White House to defy them based on the idea of executive privilege. That means that the president has executive privilege over this and that Congress can't get at these documents. This is something the Supreme Court has held many, many times. It is a long-standing tradition in the United States. And I'm sorry, Jamie Raskin. I'm absolutely sorry. Your committee is unconstitutional. You're a fool. And Joy Reid, gosh, I love you. Never change. Never change, Joy. Just a warm, lovable teddy bear. We love you, Joy Reid. God bless. It's all for us here at Human Events Daily for today and for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for taking us back to #1 for Apple Politics, and also for just being that influence agent that you have to be in these times. Share this out with your normie friends. Get it to everybody. We are the bottom line up front. We are good. We are brief. We are gone. That's the entire point of this. You get in, you get out, you get the cliff notes of the entire week of what you need to know to arm yourself with facts about what's happening. But before we go, it's time for today's moment in history. Today is the 20th anniversary, folks, of the founding of the wonderful, the illustrious Department of Homeland Security. Yes, they've protected us from so much terrorism. They protected us, for example, from the rise of ISIS. They protect us from Antifa. They protect us from the BLM riots. They protect us so much. And now they are going to protect us from ourselves by locking up innocent and peaceful American protesters. God bless you to the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
It's all for us here at Human Events Daily for today and for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for taking us back to #1 for Apple Politics, and also for just being that influence agent that you have to be in these times. Share this out with your normie friends. Get it to everybody. We are the bottom line up front. We are good. We are brief. We are gone. That's the entire point of this. You get in, you get out, you get the cliff notes of the entire week of what you need to know to arm yourself with facts about what's happening. But before we go, it's time for today's moment in history. Today is the 20th anniversary, folks, of the founding of the wonderful, the illustrious Department of Homeland Security. Yes, they've protected us from so much terrorism. They protected us, for example, from the rise of ISIS. They protect us from Antifa. They protect us from the BLM riots. They protect us so much. And now they are going to protect us from ourselves by locking up innocent and peaceful American protesters. God bless you to the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
Well, happy Friday and welcome to TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. As always, I'm your host, Jon Root, and this is TPUSA Live. All right, first we're going to talk a little Hunter Biden and Brian Laundrie in today's daily briefing. Next, our guest and I will break down and give our opinion on the draconian government in Australia. We got a lot to say about that. Then we'll play one of our favorite games, Real Deal or Fake News. Finally, we'll chat about President Biden's September jobs report address, followed by tweets of the week and one last thing. All right, let's do this thing. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Once again, welcome to TPUSA Live. We got some incredible guests again, like we always do. Aram Choe is back. He is a law enforcement officer from California, TPUSA ambassador. Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
I know you were saying this offset, but I got to bring it up. You said some of your boys were watching yesterday, and they're like, "Hey, your sleeves are way too tight."
Yeah,
you gotta
I don't know. Maybe they just make them tighter, or my arms are getting bigger.
No, you get a shot to be on TPUSA Live. You got to show off the guns.
Exactly.
But we also got the host of Freedom Papers, Morgan Zegers, is here.
Hello. How's it going?
It's great to see you. Wow, that was I feel like the roaring 20s out of you.
I got to keep it fun. I mean, I'm out all the time. I got to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, nice work, Grandma. I love it. We also got political consultant and TPUSA ambassador, Colton Duncan. Welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
You're also rocking TPUSA tee right there.
Yeah, you can go on the Turning Point website, and this shirt's actually available. So if you like it, check it out and go buy you some merch.
Yes. Wow, what a plug. Good job.
Well
Good
done.
job.
Look at that. I might as well just give you these
start.
cards and have you. But we got to tell you about the daily briefing. We got some notable news for you. First off, Hunter Biden had an art show. So he's getting into art. I know Morgan and I talked about that a couple of days ago in the open, that he feels so courageous that he's getting into the art scene and that he's taking critique not only from his friends, his family, but other people. But this art show, there were some A-listers and some politicians there actually. So there was about 200 people at the Milk Studios in Hollywood, California, and the guests included actually world champion boxer Sugar Ray Leonard. We also had LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, who is President Biden's pick for ambassador to India. So things like this, it's just like
a little sketch. You gotta wonder why they're charged so much. And this is like the basic of it. The art is probably crap. I mean, is he really an artist? Who knows? But the problem is he's charging so much. Who's buying it? We don't really know. And what kind of influence are they buying when they buy that art? I will add one little fun thing though. My dad, he said something about our wooden American flags, listed them for $75,000 today and said the Hunter Biden edition. I was like, Dad.
But some of those paintings are ranging from $75,000 to $500,000. So we're not messing around. This isn't just finger painting where you're just throwing $20 out for a painting. And also the art industry, there's a lot of money laundering going on there. So like, not saying that's exactly what's happening here, but like that's where people are speculating, because when you don't know who's buying your art, it's a little sketch. That's what the White House was saying too. He doesn't know who's buying this art, but still at the same time.
He's got friends in low places, would be a nice thing to say.
The thing is,
the carpet area
Hunter
usually.
Biden, wow, he's an energy expert, right? Remember, they used to get their money from the Ukrainian energy companies. And then now he's Joe Biden, President Biden calls him the smartest man he knows, and now he's an artist. Like, this guy's going places. All that Parmesan cheese.
Oh my goodness. We're going to go to this next story here. So authorities have charged a soccer player in Brazil with attempted murder because he actually kicked a ref in the head. We have a video of that we're going to show you right now.
E que é isso, rapaz? Rapaz, que é isso? Olha o que o William Ribeiro fez.
So that soccer player from Brazil, that's William Ribeiro. Hopefully I'm saying that correct.
Oh, John, good job.
Man, thanks so much. But they charged him with attempted murder. So I guess the ref gave him a yellow card, and this is how he responded on a local radio network. Thankfully, that ref is okay, because I think I just watched on Netflix a series called Untold Stories, and the Malice in the Palace. That was between the Detroit Pistons and the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, when they jumped in the stands, started fighting people. But you see overseas, like, soccer's intense, and this is what he had to say. The ref said on a local radio network. I don't really remember what happened. Makes sense. My refereeing colleagues told me that I gave him a yellow card. He punched me in the face. I fell to the ground, got kicked, and passed out.
Ooh.
So
I'm glad he's okay.
Yeah, I'm glad he's okay too. But But you saw at the end of that video too, there was people in like riot gear right away.
I like how they were on standby.
Yeah,
like ready to run on the field. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah, and I'm not much of a soccer fan at all. It's football, they probably call it out there, but it's intense. So this next one for you. Brian Laundrie's father is actually joining the search to find his son. So we've been talking so many shows about the Gabby Petito case and where is Brian Laundrie. Obviously, Dog the Bounty Hunter is on the case because the FBI just obviously can't get it done. But according to Brian Laundrie's lawyer, Brian Laundrie's father, Christopher Laundrie, is joining authorities in the manhunt for his son. So on September 13th, Brian reportedly told his parents that he was going hiking in the 25,000-acre Carlton Reserve located just outside of Sarasota County in Florida. And then now his dad is on the case. I feel like every single day this story gets more and more wild.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to keep up. I think Charlie was here yesterday saying that he's just given up. You know, it's evolving and changing so much. We'll just wait till the next day to get updated.
Yeah.
Have you had any wild chases like this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Real quick.
No, not.
Yeah.
Maybe we stick you on the case.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, we might have to get
just
you
to
on
meet
the-
Dog, actually.
Yeah.
But before we jump into this next segment, we do have to let you know, it sounds like investigative cold case investigators called the Case Breakers, they think that they found or know the infamous Zodiac killer. We got a lot more about Australia coming up next.
Critical race theory is the most racist thing that is being spread in popular life in America.
Critical race theory is bigoted. It is a lie.
Racism's now being taught to our kids.
Dividing kids based on race, trying to say some are oppressors and some are oppressed is absolutely unacceptable.
CRT is racist, it is abusive, it discriminates against one's color.
It's not critical race, it's racism.
Conservatives! POPlitics is now on TPUSA Live. It'll be here every day in case you want to hear me out along with the rest of the Turning Point USA team. Don't miss out on all the conservative.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country's very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Aram, Colton, and Morgan. We got to talk about what's going on in Australia. I know I have a personal connection out there. My brother lives there, and this has been near and dear to my heart for sure. But I know you've seen so many of the videos, articles, everything about what's going on in Australia. It's draconian measures, basically. And we're seeing a lot of tough relationships between citizens and police, and everything that's going on there. It doesn't seem to make sense. And there's times where I look at Australia and it seems like they're almost like 16 months behind where we were.
Yeah.
So there was times where we were talking about Southern California, where you're from. I remember that lone surfer that was out there in Southern California. There was a helicopter and you had police say like, get out. And that was like early pandemic. And we're starting to see some of that
It
stuff
was a
in
total
Australia.
knee-jerk reaction and overkill in my estimation. But that was when everything was fresh and new. And here we are later, a year and a half later, and things are like that are still going on. But I think we mentioned that it was, from an outsider's perspective looking in, we really feel like that might be the whole country, but you have inside information, so.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this whole situation is the way people look at America, they try painting with a broad brush that like every single state's being run the same way. I know the conversations that my brother has with people out there, like what's going on in America, where it's like, they have different states as well. They have different states and territories, so a lot of the riots you're seeing are in Melbourne, so that's in the state of Victoria. And you've seen construction workers going out and protesting. And it's similar to us in the States because the way California reacted to COVID is different than Florida. The way that New York reacted is different than Texas. So it's the same things that we're seeing in Australia. So I think we have to be careful that we don't paint with just this broad brush, but at the same time too, we need to call out injustices when we see them.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm glad that they have a sort of federalist system. I mean, that's what is protecting us right now in America. And plug for Freedom Papers.
Got it.
It's all about the federalist system and why we don't have that centralized government where Washington, D.C. politicians are telling everybody in the country what they can and cannot do. We have our states to protect us, and when we have Biden mandates that are unconstitutional from his administration, that's when we can have our states step up and fight it back in the courts, in the judicial process, everything. And so it's really nice and encouraging to hear that because we hear so many scary stories and see that footage coming out of Australia. Hopefully they have a system like that too.
Yeah.
There's something too, every time there's a shooting in America, you always see leftists go on and, well, there's not shootings in Australia because they gave up their guns when there was a shooting. And now you see what happens, right? Like it's a case study for why the Second Amendment is so incredibly important. Australia, look at them and never, ever, ever try to come after Americans' guns.
Yeah, because who has the power now? It's
Yeah.
the government, the people there. And with these protests too, it's like, how do you protect yourself? And how do you protect you in your home where you're saying, hey, stay in your home. We got a video we're going to show you a little bit later about that, about how it's like, hey, you need to stay in your home, and we're actually to call you and make sure you're staying in your home. And it's just like, you have no power there whatsoever.
Well, what scares me, I'm seeing video footage of women being held down by male police officers and choked. Choked like with hands around the neck because they weren't wearing masks or they were walking outside when you're not allowed to be leaving the home and stuff. Have you been seeing that? What are your thoughts on that?
I've seen the same clips you did, and people message me on Instagram and Facebook to ask me my thoughts about them. And I always say that there's two sides to the story, but that looks pretty black and white. I mean, they're strapping her down and they're putting a mask on.
And she's not allowed to own guns to fight back.
Right,
It's
exactly.
insane.
Yeah.
And you're even hearing law enforcement officers out there saying like, hey, I'm just doing my job. And they're following orders, but like from your perspective too, when you see a video like that or hear news like that come out, you have to have some sort of moral compass though at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, when we swore an oath, we swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States. It wasn't to our policies and procedures and any future forthcoming rules that might violate your moral compass. And for me, my rule of thumb is if it's an order that's illegal, unethical, or immoral, I'm not going to follow it. And I'm saved because as long as I back it up with the Constitution, I should be okay. And but it's going to play out the way it is in Australia because the rules are different out there. And a lot of people are speculating that that's going to happen here. But I know American cops well enough to know that if it won't ever get to that position because we are driven by a different moral code.
Now, I'm kind of curious, can I ask, we saw police help with the enforcement of the shutdown of businesses and with all of these different fines and these different charges. Where do we draw the line where they finally say, okay, now I'm not going to enforce these mandates? I mean, I saw something come out of LA, was it the sheriff there, who said he's not going to enforce the vaccine mandates?
Right.
Do you think that we're reaching that pivotal point? Or do you guys meet, do you talk at like a local level, a state level to kind of discuss when you're going to draw the line and provide that check in the federalist system that our Constitution kind of intended for you guys to do?
That's a good argument for having a centralized police, a federal police. But there's a lot of benefits to having local police officers and departments. And I think you leave it up to each department to run how they want to run. And in the case of the LA County Sheriff, he is very outspoken. The Riverside Sheriff is very outspoken. Mark Lamb, Sheriff Lamb, the American Sheriff, is very outspoken about their stance. And that's what it's going to take. And I think it's these people that are willing to put themselves out there and motivate others to do the same thing. It's going to eliminate the fears that officers have. A lot of them are young. They have young families, and they're like, I'm going to lose my job behind this. Well, I think if they know they have places they can go where the sheriff or the chief is going to support their stance, I think we'll win that fight.
Well, now they have a two-tier system. So you have people like the Capital Territorial Chief Minister, Andrew Barr, saying that the lockdown is going to be extended until October 15th. And they seem to be similar to where New Zealand was too, where they were trying to just get cases down to zero. And that was the baseline for so long. But he's telling people that, hey, if you have a small business, you have to tell people, if you're unvaccinated, I'm not going to serve you. And he's literally saying this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Have you heard that here in the States? Yes. And this is why you have people from the left that are saying, hey, this might be the model here. Like, we might need to actually take away guns, take away little bits of individual rights and liberties, and then we're going to have the power just like Australia does.
Yeah. Well, we saw that. I thought it was fascinating. One of the craziest stories for me out of all of the last 2 years was when our mainstream media, I think it was either the New York Times or the Washington Post, they shared an article breaking down why communist China was just so strategic and successful as they were fighting COVID. And they gave credit, instead of like blaming or saying, hey, this is bad, they gave credit to their top-down one-party system, that top-down approach that really helped them enforce the rules. Yeah, it's called communism. It's called, authoritarianism, where you're doing things by force, not choice. And it was disgusting. That was American media.
And then Candace Owens had an interesting take about this too. This is what she posted on Twitter, talking about how disastrous Australia has reacted to COVID. She said, looking into what's happening in Australia, I can now confidently say that World War III is upon us. We are in the midst of a global psychological warfare under the guise of COVID-19. Governments worldwide have declared war on their people for full totalitarian control. I mean, that's exactly what's happening here too. And I think sometimes people look at that just like, oh, you're making too much out of this. You don't understand what's going on there. It's like, we have enough footage. We have enough evidence.
I love that. I mean, I get called crazy all the time, but even Charlie was saying this too. Like, this is going to be a 50-year fight to save the future of the country because the values of the West are under attack, and it's by more than just these people that are worried about COVID. There are people out there that don't believe in classical liberalism and economic independence, and they're using this to push a very scary platform. It's not just socialism that's a threat. That's the economic step. You're seeing now totalitarianism, which is the cancel culture mentality of like, make this person silent and remove them from the public square and their position of power if they don't agree with us and speak out in favor of our political views. And then the authoritarianism aspect is the COVID lockdown, restriction, mandate kind of mentality. So we're seeing a lot of this. And when Candace said that, I was like, oh boy, bringing it to the mainstream.
No, it's spot on though. And I know we were talking yesterday about, places like California, like, why don't you just leave? Like, sometimes people just don't have the ability to leave. Their whole family's there, your whole livelihood is there. And then now actually this happened in an Australian court in June. They rejected a challenge to the federal government's draconian power to prevent most citizens from leaving the country so they don't bring COVID-19 back home. I haven't been able to see my brother in almost 2 years because of this.
Oh yeah.
I haven't been able to see him or his fiance at all. And they're literally telling people, you cannot go because you might bring it back. And they're saying like, there needs to be exceptional circumstances. You need to have a compelling reason to leave. And it's absolutely insane that like, there's so many people that have stories like this. So this is not like a woe is me situation, like, but I'm sick and tired of FaceTiming my brother. I want to see him. Like, I want him to be able to actually go to the courthouse and get married. They haven't been able to get married in over.
Wait, really?
Yeah, at all. The courthouse has been shut down, but they can go to the grocery store.
Are all marriages canceled?
I guess all marriages.
I love a good rom-com.
Cancel culture
like
literally hit Australia.
These people are stealing graduations. They're stealing weddings. And I say these people. It's the media. It's governors here in America. It's China. These people are stealing graduations, homecomings. They're stealing weddings. And at some point, and I think funerals, they are. You don't get to bury your loved ones. So I really, like, people are waking up to it, right? It's like this, like, mass awakening.
I hope it's angering people, especially like the childbirth.
I want people to
think
be
you
pissed.
and I were talking about this of like, men couldn't go with their partners, their wives, into the ultrasound meetings. They couldn't go for the births of their child. Women were having to give birth alone in hospital rooms, and just that kind of stuff is really traumatizing for non-political people. I hope it opens their eyes, like, the government is doing this, and to tie it all up, it's because a communist regime in China made a virus and then spread it.
Never forget what they stole from
dots,
you.
people.
Never forget what they stole from you. That's something we have to drive home.
And before we get into this video of some of the protests and how citizens have responded, there is those territory and state lines that they have out in Australia, and there's a city called Adelaide. And right on the other side, they have a children's hospital. And during the height of the pandemic, they weren't allowing people to cross those state lines. So there were children that needed life-saving care, but they weren't able to cross state lines. And some of those children died because of these. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's gone out in Australia. And this isn't just like some conspiracy. Like, this is stuff that's happened, and it's
never
disgusting.
heard about it. That's crazy.
But this is how some of the citizens have been responding out in the streets of Australia. And at the end of that video, they're chanting freedom.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're looking for. And the relationship between police and citizens is just horrible. It's probably worse than President Biden's poll numbers right now. If I'm gonna be honest, it's terrible the way they have treated these people. And like we talked about earlier, they're just like, I'm just doing my job. But that only goes so far. It's like, hey, you're an Australian citizen as well. Can you understand that and empathize with that as well?
And what I don't understand is they're members of their own community. They're invested in their community. And I think we really lost touch when we stopped funding the ancillary police activities like the youth activity leagues, community-oriented policing, where you actually had police officers from the community, embedded in the community, developing relationships. And there's something to be said about having empathy in your neighborhood. You police more effectively. We don't see that today.
and you have to see this too. We have this video. This is from 9 News Australia. We're talking about draconian measures that are going on in Australia. This is something that's actually happening when they're talking about a pilot program where they're trying to keep you in your home and track you, geo-track you when it comes to COVID. Check it out.
Today, the call has gone out to everyone in home quarantine in Victoria to take part of our pilot program. And what that means is that they will receive random phone calls and they have to answer within 5 minutes with a selfie sent to this app, which will then geo-track where that person is and to make sure that they are who they say they are as well. If they don't answer within that 5-minute period, that's when health officers come knocking, Pete.
Don't answer within 5 minutes.
What if you're sleeping, taking a nap? I don't know, showering, taking a bath. I'm thinking of all the things where I'm going to get in trouble. Like if I was in there, I would be in the gulag by now. I swear.
Just somebody knocking outside your door. I was just taking a nap.
Does anyone else feel like it's like we're living in a dystopian movie, like like Fahrenheit 451 or V for Vendetta, like where they're tracking you? It's very dystopian, and it's like a nightmare we can't wake up from.
Well, that's the thing for us when we think of all this behavior. We're like, oh, it reminds us of movies. It reminds us of things. Well, like literally just a couple decades ago, you guys, and even now in the world, communist China has concentration camps for the Uyghur Muslims. This stuff happens. Like we can't be so ridiculous with our frivolous complacency because we've had so much luxury and like all this freedom and choice in our lives. We've never felt force before. Now we're experiencing it. And for us, we're like, this reminds me of 1984, a fake book. And then in reality, so many people have suffered from governments like this and we just aren't educated on it. And so we have no idea what's really happening here.
And the crazy part about this whole thing, sharing these stories, there's people that actually think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Not only just people in power, but people thinking like, you know, geo-tracking, that might be a good idea.
We live amongst tyrants. Do you know how many people support vaccine mandates? A concerning amount.
Yeah. So just probably the last take on this, for you as a police officer, what's been your reaction and how do you think the citizens should continue to go about this?
Well, like Morgan said, we need to fight back. I think we're systematically getting desensitized. And I think it was just last week, there was a lawmaker in New York that tried to introduce limiting of children.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, yeah. It's just, I mean, that's what occurs in China.
They were trying to do what? Limit the amount of children?
They were trying to actually sterilize men after they had 3 children before the age of 40.
It was their like joke response to abortion, but they proposed a legit bill that said after 3 kids, the men get sterilized.
There are people that hear that today and they'll hear
go,
it when it's really going to happen, and
they're worried about overpopulation and climate change.
Right.
Coming up next, we're going to play one of our favorite games, Real Deal or Fake News. Morgan will probably say everything's real.
Yep.
See you soon.
Don't bust me, John.
This has all happened before. The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. It's time to play one of our favorite games of all time, Real Deal or Fake News, because we know the internet is just full of fake news, but it's honestly tough to tell at times. That's why we love places like the Babylon Bee, because it's like, that's what I love about that. They're like, hey, some of this actually became true.
Yeah, they always, they are so funny with speeches, because when they do the speeches, they'll show one of their headlines and then how 2 weeks later it became a real headline. And like they are guessing what comes next and they're pretty correct.
Yeah.
It's funny. They
Like,
make the whole crowd like
real and satire.
so
it's
funny.
tough to tell.
The lines
at
are being
times.
blurred.
But we're gonna start out with this first one. Real deal or fake news? Terrorists released from Guantanamo Bay to make room for parents who protested at school board meetings. Aram, what do you think? Real deal or fake news?
Oh my god! I mean, the rational me is saying fake news, but I mean, what's going on today? You never know.
You're going fake?
Yeah, I'm going fake.
Gonna be a headline in 6 months, but this
Yeah.
is so Babylon Bee.
Is Babylon Bee fake news right now?
All right, they're calling Babylon Bee. Are they correct? Is this fake news? It is the Babylon Bee.
But again, gonna be real in like 6 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It does
So
feel
what are
real.
you doing to prepare for this moment is what I'm telling people.
Yeah, that's where it's come to, is just if you disagree with what's going on in these school board meetings, what's going on in your just county or whatever,
Send
it's
them
just
to
like
Gitmo.
send them to the gulag, send them to Gitmo. But Babylon Bee with a good one there. Next up, this one's about Joy Behar. I know you're gonna like this one. Joy Behar says black people shouldn't be scared of the COVID vaccine anymore because white people were the experiment.
Super real.
You go.
That's gotta have happened.
Why
I'd
do you-
open it faster.
Why do you think it's real?
Because that's how they speak these days.
Yeah.
It totally could come out of their mouth. It's shocking, but not just, it's disturbing, but not shocking, I should say.
And Colton, we know you love to talk
I
about The
love
View.
the ladies of The View. Like I said, they're just
Be
a bunch
careful
of
right now.
hens. Cluck, 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 cluck. That's all I hear when I turn The View on. That is real. And I will remind people, Joy Behar wore blackface at one point. So I mean, maybe she does have an argument from authority on this one.
Aram, what do you think? Are you going with them as a
Yeah,
real
I'm
deal?
gonna stay with them. This is real.
All right, they're saying it's real. Let's check out and see if they're right. So that is actually a real article from the Daily Caller, and it's not shocking. I know when The View had their absolute disaster that went on, which I think was actually on purpose, when they had a couple of their hosts taken off because of testing positive for COVID when Vice President Kamala Harris was there. Like, what a debacle. I think they did that on purpose because we all talked about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we actually love
They have
talking
no
about it because it's
relevancy.
like, all right, we'll take questions from the audience, and then this producer's trying to figure out what's going on, and then VP Harris, where are we going to put her?
Mm-hmm.
I just did not want to talk about The View that much, but I'm like, this is entertaining stuff.
Yeah.
But Joy Behar, what a hen.
John, don't take on his bad habits.
I won't.
I'm so disappointed in all of you right now. I don't like those ladies either, but I won't call them that.
I've got
She's
other
a bad
words.
lady. Let's say that. Let's check out the next
I just realized I'm the only lady on this couch.
one. All right, Pfizer assures that vaccine is almost as safe for kids as COVID. Real deal
Wait.
or fake news?
We're going too fast here. My mind's mush.
you want
Can
that
I
up
have
again?
it back up?
We'll throw that back up. we'll make sure that you're listening. All right, here we go, Grandma. Pfizer assures that vaccine is almost as safe for kids as COVID. Real deal or fake news? Man, you're really struggling with this one.
I don't get the words. I'm like, what are they saying? Okay, I think I got this.
Sounds like they're just trying to say that the vaccine is, if you get that, it's
The
just as safe as
immunity.
getting COVID.
As a natural immunity that comes
That's
from getting
what I'm
COVID?
getting at least.
Or like the risk of getting COVID is just
Yeah.
as bad as the risk
I
of
think
getting
they're
COVID.
acknowledging that.
But you got to know
Oh,
too. It's like
no.
I have the answer, so
Yeah,
I can't
that's
give you
fair.
too much.
Oh wait, what are your guys' answers?
Real deal. I think this is real.
You think it's real?
Yeah,
I think-
it's designed to confuse. It's real.
I'll say Babylon Bee. I don't know. I'm confused.
Morgan's going Babylon Bee. Who's correct, the boys or the one lady?
Oh yeah.
Oh, Morgan,
yeah.
good work.
See,
So that is
that's
Babylon
what
Bee.
it means. Is like they mean the vaccine and getting COVID, not like the antibodies. So like it's the joke there. I'm smart.
Now she's picking up what you're putting
I
down,
am
Babylon
funny.
Bee. Good work.
Way to go,
I have
Seth.
humor.
Well done, boys. You got to pick it up this next round.
I know.
right?
I'm on the loser couch. Remember?
This is the loser
Yeah.
couch. I don't know if you guys watched yesterday, but we played this. It was a game kind of like catchphrase, first time ever. Word, that's what we're calling it. And it was Alex Clark and Charlie Kirk
I heard
against us two, and we just barely lost. And
John
they just,
calls me a grandma, but you're a grandpa.
I got dad jokes all the
Okay,
time. That's what people know when they're watching this. I'm the dad.
Yeah.
I'm the dad of
Very
the
good.
office. But they deem this the loser couch.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
know,
it was real fast.
I've
too.
only ever sat right here, so that makes sense.
yeah, you guys should feel like winners over there. But we got this next one for you. Real deal or fake news? All right. Local man prays that wife's text message of okay really means okay.
That's funny. That's funny.
You're the only married person here. Have you ever
Am I?
received a text message from the wife that said okay?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like just trying to decipher code. I worked harder trying to figure out my wife's text than I have as a detective. It's but, things get lost in translation on text as it is, but for
Yeah.
the wife, it's like, oh, especially if it's a one-letter K, like a K. I'm like,
Oh, that's
what did
the
I do?
worst. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm retracting my steps. I'm like, what did I do?
See, I'm big on, I hate texting. I have like 600 unread text messages, so I really shouldn't be commentating on this. But I'm a big audio
Popular.
messenger, and so I love to freak people out with just like replying constantly with audio messages. It's a little weird, but
That's
I'm also
smart.
normalizing to radicalize for that. Not just homesteading, we're normalizing and then radicalizing for audio messages.
Yeah, use that hashtag and tag Morgan Zegers. But is that
I'd
real
say this
deal
is
or fake news?
fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah.
So once again, it's local man prays that wife's text messages of okay really mean okay.
I love how you had to read that again for me.
Yeah, I gotcha.
I think that was a joke.
All right, fake
I
news.
think it's a joke too. Fake news.
All right, they're all going fake news. Let's see if they're right. It is fake news. That is
Nice.
Babylon Bee once again. I love this guy's face here, where it's just like you were saying, Aaron, like, oh no. Like, how do I respond to this? This is another okay.
Well, that's the thing with healthy relationships. Communication is important, and so I don't know why anyone would just send an okay.
Wow. Hot takes there.
Hot
Next
take.
one, real deal or fake news. This one out of California. California man sues psychic who said she could remove witch's curse from ex. So I think we're going on the relationship train here. So is that real deal or fake news? We'll start with you, Morgan.
Sounds real. I don't know.
Especially for California.
Yeah, it just sounds weird enough to be real.
I'm not just copying Morgan, it seems like that, but I think it sounds real too.
Why do you think
You're
it's real?
copying
One,
me.
we're on the winning couch.
He's copying me.
But it's just, sometimes like the more bizarre the headline, it's like, no one can make that up. Even
Yeah.
Seth Dillon can't make that up. Like, it's got to be,
I'll go
I
with
think it's
it.
real.
Well, because yeah,
Maybe
like you
witch
said,
because of Halloween.
Oh.
you
It
said
could be
like
a Halloween theme.
there's an aspect that like from California. I think that could
Oh,
be the
yeah.
buzzword. They're from
it to
California.
the winning
Man
couch.
sues psychic who said he could remove witch's curse.
Yeah, it
from
might be
ex.
just, I mean, just being from California, knowing what outsiders think. I think it's just weird enough that an outsider would have created that. So I'm going to say false.
Okay, I like this difference.
So you go in fake news. Let's check and see who is correct. Is it real deal or fake news? So actually, this is real deal. This is actually from Fox News' odd news section.
Wow.
So she allegedly claimed that she claimed she could remove a witch's curse put on him by his ex-girlfriend for just over $5,000. $5,000. Dude, $5,100. I don't know what the extra hundreds
That's
for.
a lot of Chipotle meals. Also, you guys suck. We just won that game, like
Oh
really
my
big
gosh,
time.
It's the suck couch now.
I didn't even get to guess. All right, well, I guess this is the loser couch, but I guess he's asking $25,000 in damages. Wow.
I mean, maybe his heart is wounded. That's an
Well,
expensive
I think it would have
thing.
to be if you're going to these measures to
It's a
try
lot
to
of
get the witch's
emotional
curse away.
loss.
But Fox News odd news section, I think I need to go to. I need to check that out more often. But we got another one here. This one's about the Pope. All right, the Pope says he will address sex abuse scandal once he's finished talking about climate change.
I want to say this is real so bad, but I
Pope,
feel
what's
like
his
it's Babylon
priorities?
B. I want to say it's real because it's hilarious, but Babylon B.
You going fake news?
Babylon B.
Going Babylon B, fake news?
I want to go against the grain just because, but I'm tired of losing. So
He wants to be a part of the winner's circle. Why do you think that is? Why do you think this
I
is?
just want to, well, why do I want to be part of the winner circle?
Yeah.
I just want to be a winner.
You've been
for
going through a lot over the last
I
24
know.
hours. Let's check and see. Real deal or fake news? That is fake news. So that is from Babylon B. You guys called it, but that's
It's
what's so
literally what
funny. You have
AOC
to have
would
that
do.
like that extra
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, AOC would be like, we are going to die of climate apocalypse. We'll talk about sex trafficking later. We don't care about the border. There's concentration camps at the border. Don't mind the sex trafficking of children.
They need to get their priorities in
literally what
order.
they're
We
saying.
got this last one for you with just about 40 seconds left. This one about dinosaur shrimp. Hundreds of three-eyed dinosaur shrimp surface in Arizona.
Yeah, that's real.
You think that's real?
Seems weird.
I've never heard of a dinosaur shrimp. Is that just
I
like a
wanna try
massive
it.
shrimp?
I love scrimps.
I think it's real deal or
I think
fake
it's
news?
real.
Real?
I mean, yeah, it's Arizona. There's dinosaur bones, so yeah, let's go with it. It's
But
real.
we're not by the ocean,
Let's
though,
check
right?
and see if it's real deal or fake news. That is real deal. So that is from the New York Post. But good work. Always a lot of fun there. But hey, we're going to be back and we're going to be talking about President Biden's September jobs report. We got a lot to say. See you soon.
Awesome.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Cute services! POPlitics is now on TPUSA Live. It'll be here every day in case you want to hear me out along with the rest of the Turning Point USA team. Don't miss out on all the conservative.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. We're at TPUSA HQ with Aram Choe. He's a law enforcement officer in California, political consultant Colton Duncan, and the host of Freedom Papers, Morgan Zegers. So if you haven't been watching the news at all, we're going to give you the news about President Biden's September jobs report address. So first off, he ran over an hour late for this, and it was interesting watching the news. I was watching Fox News earlier, and they're like, honestly, if you have bad news, you're probably going to run late, and you're going to be talking to your PR team and really trying to figure out how we put the teleprompter together, because he needs to make sure. There might have been a few edits there, but he came out right away, President Biden, and said that this was basically positive. Tried to spin it in such a way, and then he also spun the idea that, hey, this jobs report, it came out in mid-September, and cases were really high at COVID, and then now it's different, and so he was basically just trying to use that as a crutch, and this is exactly what he had to say. So what he had to say about that was just once again, just using the idea that COVID is something that it would have been better if COVID cases were better. He said he would squash the virus, and then now he's using it as an excuse.
It's all a lie. I mean,
They
I
just
think
twist everything.
we're kind of not the smartest, I would say. I think we have a big problem of ignorance across America, but I'm sorry. Everybody can look at what he's saying these days and understand that he's lying, and that what he's saying is false, and that what he's saying is not really coming from his heart. And everybody sees that. That's why his approval numbers are so low, because everybody can tell how disingenuous this is. And we feel disrespected. His tardiness with it, his demeanor. I mean, isn't this where he was like, God bless our troops? Like, what?
Yeah, at the
so
end, that's
empty.
Yeah, we actually have. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but we have
that. I just hate that. But that was my least favorite part, so it's on my mind.
But that was one of my least favorite parts too. Was that idea that hey, I'm going to give you just all this mumbo jumbo about what's going on here, and I'm going to blame this person or that person or the virus, and then not actually once again just not taking responsibility at all. It's if it's not living up to standards, which they expected there to be about 500,000 jobs filled in the month of September. Economists said that, but only 194,000 were filled. So you also have, we had this great tweet from actually Kayleigh McEnany. She said, our president is delusional. President Biden calls the dismal job numbers significant improvement. And then let's actually check out some headlines from the liberal media. She says The Hill was saying way below expectations. CNBC was saying comes up short. CNN, another disappointment. NPR saying job growth slows sharply. It's you're not fooling anybody. Just own it. And I feel like you need it. He's obviously never owned Afghanistan. Nope. Hasn't owned inflation. Hasn't owned the jobs report. And I think that's what, there's so many people just calling for accountability too. When you're wrong, you're wrong. When you fall short, you fall short.
It rubs salt in the wound with how disrespectful and dismissive he is of everything that he messes up. And I saw I can't remember who tweeted it, but it was something along the lines of President Trump might have hurt your feelings, but President Biden has hurt your freedom, your finances, and your family. Which would you rather have? And I hope that young people that never experienced President Bush or President Obama, and their first experience of a president was Trump, I hope that now they're able to see okay, so we have President Trump, who was a little aggressive but got us great results, and we didn't really suffer or struggle under him, and now we are massively suffering under President Biden. What would I rather have in a leader? So I hope that this real world experience will open their eyes to that, and it's a shame, but it's too late. It's not like we can go back. We're going to have to keep working on this in the coming years.
And a lot of people wonder, do we have a job shortage? No, we have a worker shortage, because there's 11 million jobs that are open right now and 7 million people that are unemployed. And it's just as simple as that. Yeah. The numbers and the data are out there. So what's been your response to this?
These people, they twist everything, right? They said that for months and months, a year, to defund the police. And then all of a sudden, when it came out that that's not popular. Well, it's the right that wants to defund the police. We never did. And so he's doing this again. It's like looking at the camera and saying blatantly lying to the American people obviously isn't working, because his approval rating is lower than it's ever been. And so stop lying. I mean, at least President Trump would get in front of the camera and just tell you the truth. It was a harsh truth, and he was a little aggressive, but it was nice to be told the truth as an American citizen.
Yeah, in the sense of like taking responsibility, we're going to show you that clip now of President Biden trying to blame COVID for the abysmal job numbers.
And it's a tribute to the hard work and resilience of the American people who are battling through this pandemic, working to keep their businesses afloat. Remember, today's report is based on a survey that was taken during the week of September the 13th. Not today, September the 13th, when COVID cases were averaging more than 150,000 per day. Since then, we've seen the daily cases fall by more than 1/3, and they're continuing to trend down. We're continuing to make progress.
And I think it's so funny too, at times you hear this and it's just like, we know what the numbers are. We know how abysmal this job report's going to be, and then he comes out and basically just is trying to tell us that like we're making progress. It doesn't matter how many times you say progress or you try to blame somebody else. It gets to a point where it's like someone needs to take responsibility for what's going on here, and it's on you. And like you said too, after this whole just abysmal address and report, no questions. No questions. Wasn't taking any of those. Just saying, God bless our troops. Goodbye.
It takes me back to when I used to have to do home visits for kids that didn't want to go to school. The parents would make excuses. You know, they were essentially enabling. So when I hear this speech from President Biden, and he's not addressing the fact that we have a lack of people willing to work, it's not a lack of job availability. What we've really done is created the situation by enabling them.
Mm-hmm. And then Jesse Kelly had this great take. I want to get your response to this. He's fantastic. He's one of those people that just absolutely tells it like it is. So he tweeted this out earlier. In the past 2 years, government has told people they're not allowed to come to work, then paid them not to come to work, then begged them to come back to work, and then fired them for refusing the vaccine. Yeah. It's so eloquent. It's just the best way to put it. And people, like, the unemployment status got pushed to September. So there's people still chilling on their couch making good money. Yeah. And we're wondering why there's a problem.
Well, we have the same thing. Like, I hate to say it, humans aren't exactly the best sometimes. Let's put it like that. And so another great example of this, they will use government. If government's going to give them something for free, they'll take it. A lot of people are not like, no, I want to provide for myself and my family, and I want the dignity that comes with that. Instead, we had the rent evictions, the eviction moratorium, where if people weren't paying their rent, the government was blocking landowners and property owners from saying, then you can't live in my property. And so the property owners are then paying for all of those expenses as people live for free in their property for over a year. And the left is continuing to try and have this eviction moratorium continuing. It's ridiculous. It's unconstitutional. None of it makes sense. You shouldn't be allowed to do it in America. But where does the buck stop? How come our system isn't working right now to hold these people accountable? I'm so confused. I love America. I love our government system. I love our checks and balances. Where are the checks and balances, though, is what I'm wondering. Mm-hmm. What the heck?
Well, you actually need journalists doing their jobs. That's why we love Peter Doocy from Fox News. Not only does that guy have great hair, he has great questions. Like every single day.
His hair,
like I appreciate that. But like him and Jen Psaki are going after it every single day, and you can tell how angry she gets because that is the only person that's really asking legitimate questions every single day. Explain this. Yeah. Like, because if President Joe Biden is going to just leave after giving an address, you need to speak for him, and we need answers to this.
The media, I have nothing good to say about the American media. Nothing good to say about the media. I mean, they are. It's almost criminal. I mean, it gets a little weird to say that, but it's almost criminal to like bury stories the way they do, and then like intentionally not cover things the way they do, because there's so much out there that they could be covering, and they just refuse to do it.
Yeah. Well, things they should be covering is like inflation. So we're wondering why there's such an issue right now. That we are spending so much more than we've spent in about 7 years when it comes to gas. Like this is the highest gas prices have been in 7 years. And then we actually have a great photo. A lot of people taking some stickers and putting a little bit of blame on President Joe Biden there, saying, I did that. And it's true. It's like we were spending way more money on gas, and then we're trying to get oil from overseas and then not using it here. And all this stuff doesn't make sense, especially too, like we had an incredible economy under President Trump. Just think what you want about President Trump, but like we had a booming economy. We were respected by all our enemies.
We were energy independent.
Exactly.
I mean, that is so seriously important. What frustrates me, the left, they're always talking about progress. Well, they deliver regress, and the regress especially affects the working class and the middle class because it increases, just with basic inflation, their policies, it increases the cost of average everyday goods that we have to buy, that rich people have to buy. But for us, when that increases, it's a huge portion of our income compared to the rich people that like really don't care. I mean, did you see Bill Gates or whatever went on Oprah or Ellen or something, and he like had to guess the average cost of like home goods and stuff, and he was like, laundry detergent $5, I don't know. No, it's like 20 something.
Yeah.
He has no idea. It doesn't matter to them, but it affects us. It affects me. I'm sure you guys too.
Yeah. And then you having a family, like you're buying groceries.
Oh yeah, it's like
for the
feeding,
entire family. It's more expensive.
they're teenagers and preteens, so it's everywhere we go, we're no longer in the kiddie menu section anymore. They're all eating adult food.
Or the kids eat free mint. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's But you know, on a side note, I don't know what's in our food, but my kids have been growing like weeds. But as such, it hurts the wallet. Absolutely. We used to go out more, and we used to frequent mom and pop restaurants because we want to support local businesses run by families. And it's just harder to do that, and it's forcing them to have to close down because other families are doing the same thing. They're feeling the burden of these value meals that aren't so much value anymore.
Right. So if they didn't get shut down during the COVID lockdowns, right? If they were just able to survive that, just barely able to survive and hang on, well, guess what? Here comes President Biden, and inflation's going to take them out. It's so sick what they're doing to this country.
And there's shocking numbers when it comes to groceries too. So according to Daily Wire, Tyson Foods, the second largest meat and poultry producer in the United States, hiked its average price for pork by 39%, chicken by 16%, and beef by 12%.
I hate buying
these
groceries
numbers,
every week.
like 39% for pork.
It's insane.
Get your hunter safety license and get your hunting license.
Seriously, yeah, we need to be hunter-gatherers.
Well, it's important, at least a small percentage. That's I hear more of the expertise people that talk about this of building self-reliance away, and they talk about, obviously we can't all just fill our fridge with deer meat and survive on that for the whole year, but we can all work to make sure that a growing percentage of the food that we consume and everything that we have, all of our resources, is more focused on local resources and self-reliance. Instead of these systems.
And I don't know if you brought it up earlier, but why are we buying foreign meat when we're growing it here at home? How is that cheaper?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
It's like 3% of the nation feeds the other 97%. It's like a thing that we said in growing up in FFA. The agricultural community is just hurt so, is it like being railed over and over and over by the Biden administration. And then we bring in meat from other countries. We bring in crops from other countries when we could be buying here, right? And so these people are being just, raked over the coals.
And then the cost too of going back to school is the increase is about 9% now. So it's like you got kids in school too, and so many people out there. It's like everything just costs more and more and more, and it's hurting American citizens all across the country.
But hey, the hot dogs on the 4th of July were what, 16 cents cheaper?
Thank God for those hot dogs being cheaper.
I forgot about that.
Honestly, we're going to see that again. She's probably going to give us the same numbers on like Thanksgiving Day and be like, well, the canned cherries are a little bit cheaper than last year.
But a lot of this comes down to it's like the global supply chain. So what happened with COVID? There was a lot of ships that were just off at sea. They're just sitting there, and then now there's so many products, and they can't get them to market. So, like stuff is just sitting there. So this needs to get it's just spoiling, and this needs to get figured out. So you think Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg should probably do something about this?
How is he in charge of this right now? Oh my gosh!
But at least he rides his bike to work. Thanks, Pete.
You're really positive change.
Yeah, seriously, with stuff like that, where it's like people need to understand, like people need to do the research. That's why I'm glad we can have conversations like this. Like this is what's really going on.
Because the media's not covering it.
Of course not.
So it's up to Turning Point USA or Daily Caller, some of these smaller groups to cover things like this.
And then we're going to wrap up with this. So here is actually President Joe Biden. This is how he ended this address.
Ugh.
God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.
It is. It's cowardly.
Yeah,
cowardly.
Of course he's running away. Yeah.
Shut that thing and get out of there.
Yeah, and honestly, I hate using the word like offended. I don't feel like I was offended. I was more just like irked when he said, "May God protect our troops." There's still people out in Afghanistan, like troops, and it's just like it's so brain dead to me that you can just talk to the nation like this and then just have some sort of just filler phrase to wrap it up.
Well, it's interesting you use that. They've manipulated that word so much that they get offended over everything. Well, now, because troops died because of our president's behavior and actions and his administration, and now he says that kind of stuff, that is a reason to be offended. That is a good reason, John.
Coming up next, we got tweets of the week for one last thing. We have a lot of really good ones. We'll see you in 3 minutes.
In these United States of America, this great country of ours, American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call huelte. Huelte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like the Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism, and I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Aram Choe here. You were just talking during the commercial break. You watch TPUSA Live all the time.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Love
That's
that.
what I love hearing too.
You
That's
ever
it.
seen Freedom Papers?
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite shows. Yeah.
That's on Monday, right?
How sweet of you. Do you feel educated? Edumacated?
All the time. I mean, I needed to educate myself before I came on the show, so that's the best way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we always appreciate the support too. It's been amazing. We've been doing the show for about a month now, and we've gotten such a great response. We appreciate all the support, and now you are going to get some great content right here, right now. For one last thing, we got the tweets of the week.
Okay.
Let's do it. We got a lot of really good ones. We're going to start with this one here, talking about J.K. Rowling and Dave Chappelle. Here we go. So, hey, J.K. Rowling and Dave Chappelle, trans women are women. Trans men are men. Non-binary people are themselves. Stop giving hate speech a platform. Matt Walsh had a great response to this. He quote tweeted and said, "Your quick question, what is a woman?" Just like, riddle me that.
The world's weird. My Subaru is a Cadillac. Okay. You just say that doesn't make it true.
I know. I see this stuff. I used to like be all into talking about it and keeping up with their words. I just don't anymore. Like, let's just stop. Let's just let them do their own thing, and let's just call them what they are: flat earthers of science and gender.
Did you see what Justin Trudeau put on Twitter? He had like this. It wasn't like LGBTQ. It was just like 2AGQ LGBT plus minus.
Remember when it was LGB and LGBT?
And just keep
and then
adding.
they added the Q and then the IA and then the plus. I was in college for all of these editions.
Wow. But real quick too, I was like, I watched Dave Chappelle's special last night.
Is it good?
It's great, and there's a lot of stuff like I didn't really care for, but I'm like, thank God he's crossing the line, and it's great. Like if you get unbelievably offended and want to cancel this guy, maybe you're the problem. Next up, we got this one. Benny Johnson, our guy, TPUSA contributor, saying, people seem excited about the Fauci documentary. You see that 74,000 down compared to 7.2K thumbs up.
I love that so much. That's grassroots, baby. I love that.
That's funny. You were bringing up earlier, too, is that some of President Joe Biden's speeches, like the comments were so out of control and the thumbs down were so much.
They'll turn off the function. Like they'll turn it off because it gets so bad that like YouTube will come in and turn off that function on behalf of the president.
We are fiery. I'm so loving it.
The people have spoken.
I'm surprised no one's gone over there and just flipped the phone over. And, hey, you're doing good.
But now we need all those people to start organizing at a local level and work with their law enforcement and then with their local leaders, state leaders to fight back against these mandates and authoritarianism. That's what I want to see next.
I think we need the White House intern back just saying, hey, President Joe, I don't think they like that.
There's 74,000 dislikes.
Yeah. But this one you're going to like a lot. Okay. Speaking of OG social media, check this out.
Oh, okay.
So actually, this one is going to be from our guy, one of our first friends.
Oh,
this is from Tom from MySpace saying, I think he's saying good morning. It wasn't me. And I think when Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram were down, that's I don't think he tweeted in like a couple years, but I always loved MySpace. And that's something like the top 8. I feel like that was always a topic of discussion.
Yeah. I mean, you almost had to be a computer programmer or data writer to figure out how to make your homepage look cool and add an MP3 music from Napster and stuff like that. But I just love how he still uses the same image that he did from MySpace. Yeah, it's never changed. I wonder what Tom looks like now.
That's cute.
That's a good
Consistent
question.
branding. My mom never let me have a MySpace. I was born in 1996. I'm 24, and I never had MySpace.
Oh, you missed out.
I wasn't allowed to. It was too naughty.
It was the best.
Yeah, he never censored us. Tom never heard us, and we just all left him.
We
left MySpace.
Should we just start using MySpace? Is it still up?
MySpace is really not up anymore. It's really gone downhill.
Should we just move to MySpace?
So I'll move to. No, you
I'll
can go
make
to
a page.
turningpoint.com/live. Get your stuff from there.
Yeah. Tom, you're invited on the show anytime. We got a few more tweets for you. This one is coming from our fearless leader, Charlie Kirk. He said, just like last year, Anthony Fauci does not tell you how to celebrate Christmas with your family.
I'm so excited for Christmas.
Boom.
Yeah, I'm excited for around the corner. Season.
Yeah. If you want to have a good Christmas, hang out with your family.
Right.
Dr. Fauci doesn't tell you when and where to hang out with your family. But this one, we've had some great tweets throughout the week, but this is the tweet of the week from our guy, Brandon Brown, NASCAR driver. Check it out.
Oh, yes.
Let's go, Brandon.
I honestly, lucky him. He's like famous.
Yeah,
super famous. Capitalizing on that.
And that's what I was thinking at first. I'm like, there should be Let's Go Brandon t-shirts from him.
I'm going to buy a Let's Go Brandon hat.
As you should.
If you know, you know.
Right. Yeah, Brandon, you need to go trademark it quick.
Yeah, as he really should. That's what I thought was fantastic about the whole situation. Is like NBC and that reporter, they're really going to be hush hush. Right. Which I think is probably the smart move. As a reporter, don't really bring it up. But Brandon's just like, hey, this is my first big win in NASCAR. So let's go, Brandon. I'm going to go viral. It was fantastic. But it was fantastic having every single one of you here, TPUSA Live. Great way to end the week. Yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope people enjoyed watching you on here. But make sure you check out the live feed, TPUSA.com/live feed. Also get your tickets for America Fest, TPUSA.com/AmFest. Coming up next, we got the Spillover with Alex Clark. Thanks again, guys. It's been a lot of fun. Have a fantastic weekend. And we'll see you on Monday.
Let's go, Brandon.
I can't believe it. Weekend time.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
It's The Spillover with Alex Clark. Hopefully by now you have listened to last week's episode with Mitzi Sanchez, a heroic survivor who was abducted by a child serial killer and rapist at 8 years old. And you know, it's one thing to hear a story of child exploitation from a victim's point of view. But what about the other side of the story, told by those who dedicate their lives to fighting against evil people who harm children? The people who put child predators in prison for life or even pursue the death penalty when applicable. It's a life passion of mine to invest in stories that shed light on child exploitation. So it was very important to me to hear this specific perspective and get insight into these heinous crimes from someone who knows our justice system inside and out. The bonus? She's a conservative. The woman I am pleased to have with me today has overseen child exploitation efforts at the Department of Justice, which of course includes the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, the Criminal Division's Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section, the nation's 93 U.S. Attorney's offices, and the Office of Justice Programs, which houses the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Forces and other law enforcement grant and victim-centric programs. She served as the liaison from the Department of Justice to industry, nonprofit, federal, state, and local agencies, as well as to law enforcement agencies and governments worldwide. She's also testified before the U.S. Congress and the United States Sentencing Commission and briefed senior officials at the White House on child exploitation issues. Holy crap, I could keep going. Her background is that extensive and impressive. So I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. I am so elated to welcome to The Spillover former state and federal prosecutor and co-host of the true crime podcast, Best Case, Worst Case, Francey Hakes. Francey, I just filled in the cute conservatives of all of your extensive career history, and I gotta say, I don't even know if I got it all right. I feel like I just talked for 5 minutes only going through every single, aspect of your career, every title that you've ever held.
Well, I'm old, I think is what you're saying.
No, it means
That's what I heard.
It means I'm impressed, and I cannot believe all your experience. So, before I get into the nitty gritty of the things that you've dealt with in your career, I do want you to kind of go through just what drew you to doing this career and what your aha moment was where you thought, okay, this is what I want to do for a living.
Yeah, I can answer that. I used to watch Perry Mason reruns with my dad when I was 5.
Okay, now who's Perry Mason?
Oh, seriously?
For millennials and Gen Z?
My God, now I'm really feeling old. Well, there's been a remake on HBO.
Oh, okay.
So people should know who Perry Mason was. But Perry Mason was a famous defense attorney who never lost a case. The series was in black and white. It was a long time ago, even before my time. So it was in reruns by the time I was a little girl. And I used to watch the reruns with my dad. And the prosecutor on the show's name was Hamilton Berger. And he never won a case because Perry Mason always beat him because Perry Mason always represented the innocent person. And he would get the real killer to confess on the witness stand in the show. That was the shtick. And so Hamilton Berger would then stand up and say, Your Honor, we have to dismiss the case. Deputies, arrest the suspect. And he always did the right thing and was honorable and honest. And I wanted to be that guy. I didn't want to be Perry Mason representing the criminals, innocent or guilty. I wanted to be the prosecutor. I wanted to put the bad guys in jail. And I knew that's what I wanted to do from the time that I was 5. When I was in college at the University of Georgia, I read a story in the paper, back when they had papers, and it talked about a very serious rape case of a little girl who was about 5 in Georgia. And they were dismissing the case against the offender because they didn't get, this was pre-DNA, and the little girl was so afraid, not just of him, but men in general, that she couldn't take the witness stand. She couldn't face him. And the Constitution requires even a child to face their accuser in court. And so the case was dismissed because of what he did to her He was never held accountable for it. And that's when I said to myself, I'm going to be a crimes against children prosecutor. So
oh my
that's
gosh.
what I did.
I have chills already. And I haven't even heard any of the other stuff. It's already so good. Okay, so let's start with, first of all, for people that don't know, I mentioned it, but just to explain what it is, you co-host the podcast Best Case, Worst Case with Jim Clemente.
I do.
And explain for people who aren't familiar what your true crime podcast, kind of the style of it and what you guys do.
Yeah, it's a really casual podcast. I would call it mostly an interview podcast, although Jim and I do discuss issues, sort of issues in crime today, what's going on today, what big cases are in the news. We just talked about the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie case, for example.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you about that today.
But generally speaking, we interview our friends and colleagues, former friends and colleagues, current friends and colleagues, prosecutors, cops, detectives, agents, all about their best cases and their worst cases in their career and why those cases still haunt them. Because most of us who've been in law enforcement are still haunted by an awful lot of our cases.
What qualifies a case to be either the best or the worst usually for people that work in law enforcement?
We let them decide that. But generally speaking, the best case is something where they really learned something. It was a pivot moment in their career for them, or they got justice scrabbling against the odds. The worst case generally is the opposite. It's a case they lost, a case they never solved, or a case that was so horrific, even if they maybe won, they still will never forget it because it was so bad.
Would you consider one of the first cases that you had when you started your career as a prosecutor in 1996 to be one of your worst cases?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my very first job there in Columbus, Georgia, which is a small town in southwestern Georgia, I think I got my best and my worst case out of that office.
So tell me about the case that happened just after the Summer Olympics in 1996.
There was a little boy and a little girl who went to visit their mother in Georgia. Their father lived in Florida and had been fighting. He had custody of the children because the mom lost custody of the children. That's how bad a mother she was. She lost custody of the kids. But the judge ordered visitation. And the father in Florida had been fighting visitation. And finally, a judge just overruled him and said, you've got to send the kids to her and her new husband. Their names were Andrea and Thomas Porter. And so the father very reluctantly sent his little girl and his little boy. The little boy was 4 or 5 at the time. His name was Tony. Sent the children to visit the mother. And the stepfather, Thomas Porter, was a medic in the Army. They were both stationed at Fort Benning there in Georgia. Andrea Porter worked for the Judge Advocate General's office. She wasn't a lawyer, but she worked in the office. And during the first week that the children were there, almost immediately the abuse started. And Thomas Porter began abusing Tony in ways that are indescribable. He was punching him. He burned him with a curling iron in horrific sexualized ways and sexual places. He bit the child in the genitals. He strangled him until the child was unconscious and then stopped breathing and then revived him because he was a medic, so he knew how.
Just like a sick game, just to let me kill him and bring him back to life to keep hurting him more?
Yeah, the child was very angry at being away from his dad. He didn't like Thomas Porter for obvious reasons.
I was going to say, no kidding.
The kid was really, really smart, and he didn't like him. And he was somewhat rebellious. And so instead of punishing him the way a normal human being punishes a child, Thomas Porter struck him, punched him in the stomach, severe abdominal injuries, and then burned him with the curling iron, first on his thigh, and then in his genital area. It was horrific injuries, things that the child would never really recover from. And then there was a point after he was torturing him that he couldn't revive him. So instead of calling 911 or taking the child to the hospital, as a medic, he called his wife at her office and said, you've got to get home, something's wrong with Tony. So she rushes home, losing valuable minutes where the child is not breathing and is basically dead. She gets home and they decide, again, They don't call 911. They do not call for an ambulance. They take the child to the hospital themselves, where doctors perform heroic life-saving measures on Tony. And at the trial, when the neurosurgeon testified, he said that he had thought to himself for many years after it happened, why did I save that child? I don't think I did the right thing.
Wow.
Because the injuries were so bad. The child is blind, will always be blind because of the brain damage from the lack of oxygen. It was just an absolutely hideous case of abuse, and both the parents were charged. And I prosecuted the case with my boss, the district attorney at the time. I cross-examined Andrea Porter for hours and hours. It was a horrific case. And while the jury convicted both of them, I've never forgotten it. Tony testified. He was carried in blind and testified. We didn't ask him very many things. Basically, he was kind of the evidence himself, just that he existed. And it's really one of the worst cases that I've ever had, because I had to look at the photographs of the injuries. And those are things like a child homicide case I tried at a different office that I worked. Those are things you don't forget. The images, later as a federal prosecutor, I had to look at a lot of child pornography in my cases. You don't forget those things ever. They're burned in your memory. You can't, they don't get overwritten like on a hard drive. They're always there. You just try not to think about them. And I still get emotional when I talk about some of these cases, because Tony is a real boy, and these kids that are being abused to this day, kids are being abused, right now, every minute of every day, somewhere in this country and around the world, kids are being abused. And it hurts me. It still hurts me. And it's actually funny, not funny really, not ha-ha funny, but funny because I still carry a lot of guilt about leaving the Department of Justice and going into the private world, because I still feel like I should be there doing that, doing the same work.
But look at the work that you've done, and this case with Tony in particular. How often do you find out what happens to these kids in cases that you've worked? Where is Tony now? Do you know?
I don't. I've hoped in the years that Jim and I have been doing Best Case, Worst Case, that Tony's father might reach out and let me know how Tony is doing, because we don't. People that go through the system like that, it's a horrendous experience for them and their family after, on top of the experience they've already had of the abuse. And so I've always been very respectful about not reaching out to anyone, and let them reach out to me if they want to.
What has been a time where you have had someone, a child that was on a case that you'd worked, reach out to you? Tell us about that.
My first case ever, my first trial ever as a prosecutor in that same office in Columbus, Georgia, was of a man. I'll just call him Richard, because I don't want to identify the child, but who's now a grown up, but was of a man named Richard. And he'd been abusing his daughter since she was a baby, since she was in diapers. And when she was 9 years old, she told the authorities what had been happening to her.
What kind of abuse?
Sexual abuse. He'd been sexually abusing her, severely sexually abusing her. And she told her mother, and they went to the police. And the police arrested him, but the case then just sat until I came to the district attorney's office. I'd been there about 3 weeks, and I walked into my chief assistant DA's office, and I said to him, Mel, his name's Mel, I said, Mel, I need to try a case. And he said, you've been out of law school for what, 5 minutes? And you want to try a case? And I said, I do. I need to be in the courtroom. And he goes, all right, Francey, here you go. Very Southern. So he handed me the case file, and it was this case. And I had a week to get ready. And we went to trial, and I met the victim. I'll just call her K, KW. And I met with KW, and I met with her older sister, who had also been abused, and by this point was a young woman at 21. They both testified in the trial. It was just absolutely heart-wrenching, and the father was convicted.
Was the father in the courtroom when the children were testifying?
Yes, he was.
When they testified, did they look at him and talk to him, or did they try not to make eye contact and just look at you, or how does that work?
Yeah, I always tell them just to look at me. They don't have to look anywhere else except for once, because once they have to point them out. Those are part of you see it all the time on TV. Do you see this? The person who did this to you sitting in the courtroom, and the victim will point. They have to. That's an element of the crime, that they identify the offender. And so that one time, they both had to look at the man who had committed such terrible sexual acts against them, and they did. But the rest of the time, they just look at me. And he was convicted, and the judge sentenced him to 50 years. I was super proud of that. He's dead now. I'm also happy to report, so he can't abuse anyone else. He's never getting out of prison. I call that a pine box sentence. So he came out of prison in a pine box where he belonged. But when I think about the case, one of my biggest memories is what happened almost 20 years to the day after the conviction. And I was sitting in my house in Atlanta, and I got a call on my cell phone, and it was KW. I have no idea how she even got my phone number. And she wanted to tell me, thank you. She wanted to tell me that she was going to go into law enforcement because of me, and that for the previous 20 years, she'd had a really tough time. But whenever times were tough, she'd thought about me and all the things that I had told her that, frankly, by then I didn't even remember myself. But she remembered. I guess I had made an impression on her, and she was getting ready to graduate from college, and she wanted to be in law enforcement.
How did
My
that
proudest
feel?
moment.
How did that feel, getting that call as you're listening to her say this, that she's literally emulating her life after yours because of how much you affected her?
I think it was maybe the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. It really meant a lot. It was not something I ever expected. You know, you don't think about those things because, of course, once the case is over, you turn to the next case. There's always another case. They say prosecuting cases is like shoveling smoke. There's always more. You know, you can't really get rid of it. You can't get rid of cases. There's always more. But this was the single biggest reward, if you can call it that I could have ever gotten as a prosecutor.
One thing that I think sticks out to a lot of people that are just not really familiar with this world, maybe they do not consume a bunch of true crime stuff like I do, so it's very shocking for them to hear that you're saying a parent was involved in the exploitation of their own child. So how often do you find out that the parents themselves are actually involved in the exploitation of their own children in these cases? Is that something that rarely happens or happens a lot?
Yeah, it'll shock people who aren't aware of it. The statistics are something like somewhere around 80 to 85% of children who are abused by someone in their circle of trust. Often a parent, a step-parent, an uncle, some kind of relative. Mom's boyfriend is a very common perpetrator. Mom's boyfriend is also a very common perpetrator of physical abuse of children. And it's, a teacher, a priest, a babysitter, stranger molestation of children is very unusual, actually. It's almost always someone the child knows and knows well.
What are the reasons when, the parent actually does admit to the crime that they've committed? What are the reasons that they're giving for being able to get to such a place of depravity that they're willing to inflict harm like that on their own child?
Wow, that's a really complicated question, Alex. I mean, I've heard it all, right? I've heard defenses at trial, including outlandish defenses. This is so outlandish, it's almost funny, except that it's a real case, so it's not funny. But, I tripped and fell while I was getting out of the shower, and my penis fell in her vagina.
You're kidding me.
Oh, no, that's been a trial defense. I've had it myself. So people will say crazy things like that. It was an accident. They misunderstood. I was bathing them, very common excuse. And then the excuse I had in one particular trial when I was at the district attorney's office in Cobb County, which is just outside of Atlanta. Well, she wore a towel on the way back from getting out of the shower, and so she seduced me.
That's
the
sick.
8-year-old.
Sick.
Yeah. Excuses run the gamut. It's not like there can be a good one, let's be honest.
Okay, so you also have experience working in crimes against children units in regards to internet safety with children.
That's right.
Knowing what you know about child predators, should parents allow their kids to have smartphones and social media? If a child does need a smartphone, what precautions can a parent take to preserve their child's safety? Let's just talk about cyber safety in general for a minute with predators.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, Alex, that there's a real tension. There's a real tension between the safety factor of having a phone, so you can always reach your child. There was a school shooting today in Texas as we're filming this. So parents need to be able to reach their children. I totally get it. But there's also the fact that you're inviting strangers into your child's bedroom, into the palm of their hand. And very few parents monitor their kids' cyber behavior enough or even at all. You'd be shocked how many parents will just hand their kid a cell phone and they just do whatever they want with it. And maybe they'll ask them for permission to get apps or something, but they have no idea who they're talking to.
Is it laziness or is it ignorance?
I think it's both. I think parents don't feel like they have the time. I think there's also, they feel like a boundary or a privacy issue, which to me is garbage. Would you let your child go stand on the street naked and just wait for someone to grab them? Of course not. But that's what you're doing if they're in their bedroom talking to strangers on a webcam. It's crazy to give the children and believe me, children are anywhere under the age of 18 because it's that teenage that gets preyed upon by strangers that they then go out of their house and meet in person and horrible things happen.
But Instagram,
so you can't give them that privacy.
But Instagram and Facebook say you have to be 13 to use it.
And how do they verify that? They don't. They can't. There's no such thing. Children can get on anywhere, and they do. Oftentimes, they know more than their parents about technology. And so they're smarter about it. So parents feel somewhat helpless. They feel stupid. They don't want to admit they don't know how to monitor their kids' behavior. All parents should be going to NetSmarts, which it's NetSmarts with a Z at the end. NetSmarts is a program by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to help parents with cyber safety, cybersecurity, internet security. So I would definitely go there and be looking because they have age-appropriate lessons for parents, for schools, for camps, for everywhere, churches, so that they can provide internet safety lessons for parents and for kids.
I feel like parents, a lot of times they have this idea, well, my 12-year-old daughter is smart enough. If some guy that she doesn't know DMs her on Instagram and says, hey, send me a naked picture of yourself, my daughter would never do that. But the reality is they're not just saying stuff that's overt. Explain the grooming process that predators use online with children.
Yeah, grooming, Alex, you know the word. You're exactly right. It's grooming. Sometimes these cases are called sextortion. And so what happens is it is a process. These internet predators are like old-fashioned, old-time pimps. They understand how to prey on people. They understand how to attract them in to their circle to get them to do what they want. It's different. Sometimes they will tease your daughter with, oh, hey, how about taking this kind of sexy, naughty quiz? And so the 13-year-old will take a sexy, naughty quiz. How many boys have they ever kissed? Have you ever gone to second base or whatever they say? And the child will answer the questions, and then the person will threaten the children. If you don't take off your shirt and send me a picture of you in your bra, I'm going to tell your parents what you said in the quiz. That's a very common one, using some sort of emotional blackmail or sextortion. It's basically extortion of children. So this grooming process allows these children either through blackmail or through friendship. Think of yourself, because you're not that far from it, Alex. Think of yourself when you were 13 or 14 or 15. I don't know any girls when I was that age who were particularly secure about themselves. Well, some of them pretended it, but nobody really was on the inside. Everybody thought they were terrible. And so having a boy, especially a boy 3 years, 4 years, 5 years older than you, compliment you, tell you you're beautiful, ask you about your day, find out all that you're doing, befriend you, sympathize with you when your parents are mean to you or you get grounded. These are the things that these predators do to groom the children. And by the time the child goes to meet them at the mall or on the corner, they think they're meeting a boy who's close to their age, when really it's a 45-year-old man who has lured them out. This happened to a girl named Alicia Kozakovich. Alicia Kozakovich was a victim, and I use her name because she uses her name freely online. She's a very public persona. When she was about 15 years old, that happened to her. She was lured from her home. I believe it was in Pennsylvania. She was lured out of her home one New Year's Day or evening by someone who'd been grooming her for months, who she thought was a boy around her age, and turned out to be a grown man predator who took her, literally chained her in his basement, sexually assaulted her horrifically, for days live on webcam. And she was only rescued from that right before he was planning to kill her because someone ran across that webcam traffic and called it in to the authorities, and they found her and rescued her.
Now, is this on regular internet or the dark web?
Regular internet.
Because that's something too, is, you know, how much of this child abuse stuff and child pornography and everything is more prevalent on dark web? Is it just happening on regular internet?
Regular internet. I mean, every single case that I prosecuted at the U.S. Attorney's Office of child pornography was being trafficked across the regular internet. Now, there are certainly child pornography sites on the dark web, but it's easily available. You can get it on the regular internet. People are emailing it to each other. They're posting it to sites. There are websites that are being hosted mostly in foreign countries where you can download child pornography for a fee. You can use Bitcoin or some of these other cryptocurrencies. It is not hidden the way people think it is.
What do the victims, typical victims of sextortion online, typically look like? Are they coming from bad homes? Are they in poverty-ridden neighborhoods? You know, race, gender, what age? What is it like?
Well, Alicia Kozakovich had a great family and was strictly, upper middle class. You have to think about your teenage daughter and sometimes your teenage son, but you have to think about your teenage daughter and how insecure she is no matter how she appears. Alicia had a great family, a great home life, and normal friends. She seemed normal, but this still happened to her because she fell prey to someone smarter, older, more sophisticated, who knew the buttons to push. Child exploitation, child pornography, child sexual abuse crosses all known socioeconomic classes. It's anybody. It could be in any household. The people who are sex trafficked physically and forced into prostitution, for example, those do tend to be in a lower socioeconomic class. They tend to be sort of called from juvenile justice facilities and programs because they are vulnerable. They're already runaways. They're already sort of throwaway by their families. So that is a certain cohort. But when it comes to child sexual abuse, that crosses all lines.
And so if your child is currently being groomed like this through the internet from an online predator, what are the signs that your child is being groomed? How do you even know?
You need to look for sudden secretive behavior, the child acting in a way they don't normally, mood swings, gifts or things they can't explain, times or places they don't want to tell you where they're going or what they're doing. No child, and I know this is going to be very controversial for parents, no child should be alone with their device, their digital devices. They shouldn't have their phone in their room. They definitely shouldn't have an iPad or a tablet or a laptop in their room. Those things should only be used in common areas where the children know that they are at risk of having a parent over their shoulder, POS, at any time. If that is the case, they are less likely to be victimized. And I tell parents this all the time. You should, at least weekly, be taking your child's device and looking at it. No matter what the child says, you need to understand how to look at their search histories and look at their chat and make sure that they're not doing anything inappropriate or not being groomed.
How has the last 18 months of lockdowns contributed to child abuse cases in the United States?
Yeah, according to everything we know, hotlines, police reporting, it's skyrocketed because, as I said, most children who are being sexually and physically abused are being abused by someone within their circle of trust. They are at their most vulnerable when they're at home, and they had no school to go to. School and friends are the most common outlets for children to disclose that they're being abused at home.
Or for people to see bruises and
That's
things.
right. And children had neither. They weren't allowed to see their friends, and they weren't allowed to go to school. And so abuse has skyrocketed in the last 18 months. I'm very concerned about it.
On Best Case, Worst Case, you also talk about current cases that are in the news, which I love about your show, because sometimes it is an interview episode like you talked about where police officers giving their best or worst case. And then also sometimes you and Jem, your co-host, will talk about current stuff. So right now we have the Gabby Petito case. What are your thoughts? Because I personally am convinced his family knows more than they're letting on, whether that's the sister or the parents or all of them.
Yeah. Well, you know they know more. There's one simple reason. If they thought he'd gone away to kill himself, which is what some people are speculating, he's dead. If he'd really gone away to kill himself, they would be raising the roof to help find him. They would be begging the FBI. They'd be pointing the FBI in their direction. They'd be telling police exactly where they saw him last. When was the last communication? Here are all his email addresses. They'd be cooperating with police. In fact, they'd be knocking down their door to get police to help find him, to try to save him before he committed suicide, if that's what he was going to do. So I don't believe that's what happened at all. What I think is they know he's okay because they know where he is. There's probably some check in with us in 30 days, put a classified up somewhere, put an email. Classic tradecraft in the spy game is he's got an email account that they also can log in. He writes an email but puts it in the draft folder.
Whoa.
And all they have to do is log into the email account and see it. It never gets sent anywhere. No internet service provider can see it because it's not been sent. So like Gmail, you can't see it because it's in your draft folder. But the parents can look at it in the draft folder and you can communicate that way. It's classic spy tradecraft.
If you were a betting lady and you had to say right now, he's hiding out in a national park somewhere or he's booked it to Mexico, where do you think Brian Laundrie is?
If I was a betting woman, that's a tough one because I think those are the two biggest possibilities. Because, Florida, obviously water, boats, very easy to get out. I just think it's awfully unlikely that he's in a swamp somewhere or a national park. There's been these sightings along the Appalachian Trail, which, by the way, some of it is in Georgia, my home state. So that's possible, but that only lasts so long. He's got to have supplies. He's not out there with a bow and arrow, killing deer.
And he has survival skills.
He does, but he's not doing that. I think he's more likely in Mexico. I think he's made his way to Mexico overland. As we know, it's a very porous border.
So speaking of that, you are also conservative.
I am.
And a lot of our audience has faced backlash for their conservative beliefs. And so I'm curious, is backlash for being conservative something that you face at all in your industry? What advice can you give on overcoming not only a difficult day at work, but one that feels very personally difficult?
I've always been conservative my whole life. And as a prosecutor, I feel like, as a state prosecutor, I felt like most people were conservative. But when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, the opposite was true. Most of the career people were liberal. I did not see, except maybe at the very margins, any real impact of that divide between liberal and conservative as a line prosecutor. When I went to the Department of Justice, when I went to Main Justice in Washington to work for Eric Holder directly and lead child exploitation efforts for the Department of Justice, that's when I started to really see politicization, because it was very clear that policy is being set based on political views. Civil rights violations are far more important than child exploitation, for example. Finding police agencies that might be doing something wrong, or you think they're doing something wrong because they are arresting a lot of offenders, is far more important to you than prosecuting illegal reentry, as we used to call it. I prosecuted a bunch of illegal reentry cases, which is people who had initially crossed the border illegally. They'd been removed, kicked out, deported for committing a felony, and then they'd snuck back in. I can't tell you how many cases of those we had. And we prosecuted them when George Bush was the president. When President Obama was the president, that was not a priority. So we had to turn to something else. It's like guns. When President Bush was the president, we prosecuted a ton of felon in possession cases in Atlanta, which is considered kind of piddly for a U.S. attorney. But it was important to help with violence. And now, to help with violence, they want to, stick the FBI on parents at school board meetings. I mean, so yeah. To your point, as far as my industry now, because I'm in the TV business, it's weird being a conservative in the TV business. One of the biggest things that happened recently when Jim and I debated, because Jim my co-host on Best Case, Worst Case, knows Brett Kavanaugh personally. They worked together on the Whitewater investigation of the Clintons way back in the 90s. And so he knew Brett personally. He calls him Brett. I call him Justice Kavanaugh. I don't know him, never met him, but he calls him Brett. And he knew Brett personally. And so when the confirmation was going on, when all those accusations from Christine Blasey Ford and a couple of other women were happening, Jim and I had serious discussions about it. I think we had 5 episodes we devoted to what was happening in the Kavanaugh hearings. And on our Facebook page, I got called a rape apologist.
Of course, that happens every single freaking time.
Me, a rape apologist. All I've done my whole career is fight for women and girls who've been sexually abused. My whole career, against massive odds with no resources, when it was just her word against his. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. And they called me a rape apologist. That's politics today, though. Because I was defending Kavanaugh against what I think were false charges, and I explained step by step by step why in my...
Give the Spark Notes version of why you think her testimony, I know this is a few years old at this point, but it's still interesting to me. Why was her testimony not credible, in your opinion? Your professional opinion?
Well, she was inconsistent. Things changed. She scrubbed her social media before she came forward. The story that she gave was internally inconsistent with what other people at the time recollected. Her story was also rather outlandish. She labeled Kavanaugh a violent sexual predator. And certainly one of the other women that came forward said that he had participated in gang rape with at least one other guy. This kind of violent predatory behavior would have been seen afterwards. You don't just do that at 15 and never again. She lied. She talked about the reason that she couldn't appear at the hearing because she was afraid of flying because of the sexual assault by Brett Kavanaugh when they were 15, in spite of the fact that she'd left the country a bunch of times over her life on vacation. So just a lot of internally inconsistent things. But most importantly, the story itself didn't make sense. While I myself have prosecuted gang rape cases, it does exist. It's very unusual. And it's usually a mob mentality, not in a house with only 3 or 4 people and with someone else watching who's not participating.
Yeah.
Her story internally doesn't make sense. Those are some of the things that we talked about. And Jim is no conservative. But he and I agreed that Blasey Ford's account was not credible. It just wasn't credible. And the other 2 women that came forward afterward were just kooks. I mean, let's just be honest. They were kooks. And they were easily determined to be lying. But Blasey Ford's attitude during the hearing also, some of the things that she said she couldn't recall, didn't make any sense. Her testimony itself was not credible. She was not credible. Her story wasn't credible. And this is something that I know. I know better than most people because that's what I did as a prosecutor, was assess the credibility of victim stories.
And so when you saw those comments saying that you're a rape apologist and all this stuff, I mean, how much did that affect you? Because I get terrible, terrible, terrible things said to me, threats or whatever, on a daily basis. It is few and far between when they really do hurt where I cry over them. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes somebody will just say that one thing that sets me off. And that was just not what I needed to hear that day.
Yeah.
How much did it sting to see those comments?
The only things that hurt my feelings are usually when people call me fat or say I need to go to a fat farm or maybe stop eating burgers, which really it's not burgers, by the way. It's like brownies. But anyway, those things hurt. Let's be honest. No one likes to be called ugly. I mean, who likes that? Nobody. It's hurtful. But being called a rape apologist just made me angry because I have spent my life fighting for victims alone with no resources. And so what I said I responded to every one of those people that said something like that. And the thrust of my argument was, where were you when I was standing alone in a courtroom with a victim on one side and the defendant's entire family and high-paid defense attorneys on the other. I was fighting for her. What were you doing? You weren't there with me. You didn't volunteer at the Child Advocacy Center to help girls like this. Where were you? Because that was me every day for 16 years. What did you do?
It's like you can't even give that kind of stuff the time of day at those points because you know the truth and you know it's just a straight up lie.
Of course. Well, of course it's a lie. But that doesn't mean you don't respond. One of the things I don't do on our Facebook page is I don't delete people's comments. I can. I'm in charge of it. I let them comment because I'm a conservative. I've had to fight for my opinion and my values and defend my policy positions my whole life, unlike liberals who don't have to do that because everyone agrees with them. So if you want to get into an argument with me, bring it on.
You and Jim get into it.
We do.
Which I love. And one of the things that you have frequently gotten into it over is the FBI.
Yeah.
And because he is a former FBI
agent and profiler, yep.
Yeah, serial killer profiler.
Yes.
Which is, I hope he can come on the Spillover at some point.
He
someday.
promises.
Okay, good. So
I wouldn't ask him about politics, though.
We talked about Gabby Petito. That's in the case. We also just saw the bombshell that the FBI completely dropped the ball on the Larry Nassar case.
Yeah.
What is going on with the FBI?
You know, Alex, that's a great question. And in fact, that's what Jim and I most recently fought over. Not that he thought the FBI did the right thing there, because he didn't. But we recently dropped an episode of the podcast where we talked about what the FBI did there. And I made the comment that at minimum, the FBI should have turned over this information the minute they had it to the state and locals. Because state and local crimes against children detectives have far more experience in child sexual abuse than the FBI does, which is when we got into an argument. Because he didn't agree with me at all. We really got into it, and I actually had our editor cut some of that out. Because we were like shouting at each other. And I thought to myself later, who really wants to listen to that? Like in their ear, you know what I'm saying? It was just a lot of shouting. So we did cut some of the worst part of the shouting because we were really shouting at each other. I was very angry and he was very angry. He was defending the FBI's experience and how great it is. And look, there are plenty of FBI agents who have experience. I don't dispute that. Jim has a lot. But the rank and file, there are 18,000 police agencies in the United States. 18,000. You know how many federal agencies there are that do crimes against children? A few, like 3. So there are just more state and locals that do it all day, every day. There aren't FBI agents, generally, who do it all day, every day. So that was my main point. But with regard to Nassar, I wish I could say I was shocked, but I wasn't. Because from the time I was an assistant U.S. attorney to the time I was at the Department of Justice under Eric Holder and everywhere in between, the FBI was trying to get out of the business of prosecuting child exploitation.
Why?
Under Robert Mueller. Because Mueller came into the FBI like on 9/11, or maybe it was the day before 9/11. That's when Mueller started as FBI director. And so his entire next trajectory until he left the FBI was terrorism. He didn't want them doing bank robbery cases. He didn't want them doing child exploitation cases. He wanted them focused 100% on terrorism. But the truth, international terrorism, the truth is there wasn't enough international terrorism to keep the thousands of agents of the FBI busy. It just isn't. And state and locals could use help with internet pornography and exploitation. So that's why they did it. But Mueller made them kick and scream to get to do it. And so he would pull resources from this state. There were whole states in this country where not a single FBI agent was working on crimes against children, not one. And so I wasn't shocked to hear that the special agent in charge and a couple of his underlings in this field office in Indianapolis didn't do their job when they heard about Nassar. Instead, they just sat on it. Why? I can really not explain it other than there is a real bias amongst some people in law enforcement when it comes to sexual assault of women or girls who are over a certain age. I guarantee you, if one of Nassar's victims that the FBI talked to in that case, in that initial talking to one of the 3 women, had been 8, they would have behaved differently. But they were young teenage girls. And it was icky. And it was a doctor, and he had high status, and there were Olympians involved. And so maybe these girls were just kind of, making it up because it made them feel good. That's the attitude. And I've seen it myself in my career. And it's not just men, by the way. I've seen female detectives, female agents with the same attitude. And I think there's just a real bias in this country. Think about it. If I brought, and I did, one of the very few child abuse cases I ever lost was a girl who was 14 years old when her stepfather molested her. And the jury acquitted him. And he was guilty as sin. But they didn't believe her.
Why?
Because she was a teenager.
What is that? I don't understand what it has to do with it.
Because teenagers lie.
Anyone can lie. Adults lie.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The FBI lied about Russiagate.
Believe me, I know. I've written about that. They totally did. But yeah, that's the attitude, is teenage girls are untrustworthy.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Francey, as we wrap up.
By the way, I just want to say, that's not what I think. That's the attitude I'm trying to explain.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this as we wrap up. The FBI butchers Nassar. They butcher the Russiagate hoax. They also, we know of multiple mass shootings that they had prior knowledge that these people were likely to shoot up their schools. These kids did nothing, sat on the information. So just yes or no, in your professional opinion, is the FBI at this point a credible law enforcement agency?
I think they need serious reform.
That's fair. We'll take
I think
that.
they need serious reform.
We'll take that. Okay, so you did mention CASA volunteers a little bit earlier, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, and I'll go into detail because I'm actually a CASA volunteer.
That's court-appointed special advocate.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I wanted to ask you just from a law enforcement perspective, how crucial are court-appointed special advocate volunteers to cases involving child abuse?
Yeah, the CASA program is critical, especially in places that don't have child advocacy centers. And there are a lot of places that don't have child advocacy centers. The court system, think of an adult woman who gets sexually assaulted, gets raped. Think of all that she has to go through. The sexual assault exam is a horrific thing. The court process, she's going to be accused of lying. Her entire sexual history is going to be delved into by the defense. She's going to have to tell the story of the worst thing that ever happened to her to a jury of 12 people and stare at the defendant the whole time as he accuses her of lying or of agreeing to have sex with him. Well, and now imagine that you're 8. And that's what you need. And in about, this is my estimate, in about 70% of the cases, the mom is on the offender's side, not the child. Her own child. She sides against her own child. So the child is alone as they go through this court process. So having someone there for them, a victim advocate, a CASA, or both, is so crucial to help these children so that they can have a reasonably positive experience so it traumatizes them less as they have to go through the court process.
Francey, tell us where we can find you, what projects you have coming up that you're excited about, where to follow you, all that good stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at Francey Hakes. Also, you can check out Best Case, Worst Case. We have a Facebook page. We have lots of projects out on Audible. Our most recent was After the Fall, which is the inside story of the FBI, the largest case in FBI history. That is the investigation into 9/11 after the towers fell, which is, by the way, a very impressive piece of work. The FBI, but also our the Audible original, and that's on Audible. You can also hear Shootout, The Battle for North Hollywood, which is on Audible, all kinds. But one of the things I'm most excited about is a project I have coming up. I hope is going to be released in November. I can't tell everyone all about it yet, but it is about an unsolved cold rape case, a serial rapist who has assaulted 15 women over a very long period of time and remains uncaught. And we interviewed the women, the law enforcement professionals trying to find the man, and a bunch of other people involved. And I hope that when that Audible original comes out, that people will listen and someone will recognize the offender and we can catch him.
So I don't have Audible, but that's going to end after this.
I hope so.
I'm getting it for sure because I'm so excited about that. So what do I search for to find all of these different Audible things that you've done?
Well, we always announce it on Twitter. You can also go to our production website, which is xgproductions.com. We're always announcing our projects on xgproductions.com website. So you can check that out there. You can send emails to us. We always have those announcements.
Francey, thank you for coming on the Spillover.
Thanks for inviting me, Alex.
I admire Francey Hakes so much because not everyone can do what she does, and that's okay. Not everyone has the ability to take on the heartbreaking task of working with abused children, just like I don't have the stomach to work in medicine. At this point in my life, I think career-wise, I'm where God wants me to be. Maybe you're looking for a change in your career, or you're in high school or college and you're still trying to figure out what you want to do. And maybe Francey's career path inspires you to go in a legal direction defending children. Maybe you want to help abused kids in a volunteer capacity. So I've got some info on something that you may really find fulfilling to do because I do it and it has totally changed my life. So consider this, being a CASA volunteer or a court-appointed special advocate. Now, if you're in the Conservatives Facebook group, then I've talked about this on there and I've given updates on where I'm at and getting my new case and all that kind of stuff. So if you're not in there, you need to join Conservatives on Facebook. But this is what I was talking to Francey about earlier. A CASA is someone who volunteers to be assigned a different child's case in the foster care system. So obviously, any child in foster care has endured abuse in some way, shape, or form, whether that's physical, emotional, sexual, some kind of neglect. And you go through about 90 hours of training when you volunteer, and then you actually get to pick a case that really speaks to you. And once you pick one, after reading their entire file, you literally get to know everything about this kid. You also get to know them in person, and then everyone in their case that's in their life, their biological parents and whoever they're living with, whether that's a family member or a foster parent. You find out everything that this child needs and wants. Do they need glasses for the new school year? Would they love to join a gymnastics team? Would they benefit from a tutor? What about time to visit their best friend from their old neighborhood? Would that help them emotionally? Whatever it is, you as the CASA get to tell the court. And every so often, your CASA child's case will have a court hearing where they discuss any updates in the case and if they're moving towards reunification with the parents or adoption. And you get to write a few notes and then stand up in court and tell the court about what you've observed with your child's current living situation. If they're old enough to talk, you can actually tell the court what they've told you. You know, maybe they really want to go back to living with their dad and he's done everything that the court has asked in order to get custody back. So you recommend, hey, I think, you know, Jane Doe really wants to go live with her dad. Or maybe they are thriving with their grandparent and they want to be adopted by their grandfather more than anything. That was the CASA case that I had in a previous state that I worked in. Without a CASA, the court doesn't have this information as soon as they should. And so you actually help move that case along faster, and you help personalize the case for the judge when they're making decisions. At that point, it's not just a name on a sheet of paper. They know this kid. They know that this kid loves to eat apples with peanut butter or that they love watching Dora the Explorer. If this sounds like something that you'd like to do, it is so easy. All you have to do is just Google CASA in your county, and you're going to be able to find your local child advocate organization and then get in touch with them to learn more. If you like the Spillover and the types of guests and interviews that we've done so far, support us by subscribing, leave a 5-star review, and tell me which episode that you've liked the most so far. New episodes come out every Friday, midnight Eastern, and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Pacific, those lucky West Coast people. I'm Alex Clark, and this is the Spillover. Love you, mean it. Bye. Big dog status, I'm a big dog vet. I pull up on the block in a big Corvette. Yeah. Ride around the city with a stick all black. Try with a stroke, but we ain't with all that. Yeah.
Hey there, it's Jon Root. Coming up next on TPUSA Live, tune into the newest episode of POPlitics, where Alex Clark will give you updates on the Call Her Daddy podcast, Jay Cutler's dating life. She shares her Freak of the Week. All this and so much more pop culture without the propaganda, next on POPlitics.
Helping my parents renovate. This wall decor gotta go.
Be honest, are you the mom or the son?
Okay, I feel really attacked.
There are 5 orange juicy rumors going around about Call Her Daddy. The reason Jay Cutler broke up with Jana Kramer. Were you old enough to remember how mysterious Brittany Murphy's death was? There's a new documentary exploring it all. And speaking of death investigators, I think they've identified the Zodiac killer. Oh, and of course, we have the Freak of the Week. The big fat salsa show to end the week on. I'm Alex Clark, and this is POPlitics. This is a mega unconfirmed rumor, and it could be wrong, but I doubt it because I'm never wrong.
That's not true! That's not true!
But I think Alex and Sophia are getting back together for Call Her Daddy.
You need to leave!
Dude, I am telling you, listen to this. Du Bois, whatever, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, is like a giant digital celebrity tip line where people can send in anonymous inside scoops about anyone famous. So 2 days ago, someone sends in this. Subject, missed call. Message, word on the street is that 2 famous podcast hosts are reuniting after the nastiest breakup. One offered the other a small cut of the large pot they now get in hopes to meet ratings they promised in turn for an extremely large payday.
Take it back. You take back what you said.
How could this be anyone besides Alex and Sophia?
This anticipation, it's making me mental.
Since Alex signed exclusively with Spotify, Call Her Daddy has not been as high as it used to be in the charts. Probably has to do with the fact that she has completely abandoned what the entire premise of the show is supposed to be, which is talking about sex and crazy dating escapades, to now focus on like self-help and serious interviews. Yawn.
It's boring. So boring.
We have so much self-help crap out there, and everyone seems to get more and more helpless. Bring back the dating escapade stories.
That is not what I signed up for.
Plus, both Alex and Sophia have gotten places in NYC this week.
Guys, maybe she's right.
Okay, Alex just signed a $60 million deal with Spotify. She can afford to give Sophia some of that. And she is definitely the type who would swallow her pride, say sorry, and try to mend things if her ratings were not what she promised. I'm sure she's feeling mega pressure right now. Just tell me, do you think I'm right about these 2 getting back together?
Okay, so let's start with just like the basics. So we have kind of told the Daddy Gang in the past that everything is from the trash. So let's tell you guys what is from the trash. The painting. This amazing Coco Chanel painting. Trash. This little desk. Trash. This coffee table.
Trash. After Jay Cutler and Kristen Cavallari's divorce, Jay started dating actress Jana Kramer.
That's considered a rebound.
But it looks like Jay already broke it off with Jana after a short time together. According to E! News, they allegedly started dating because Jay wanted to get under Kristen's skin after trying to rub their relationship in people's faces all around Nashville. The conservatee is that Jay broke it off because he was trying to make Kristen jealous and it wasn't working because she didn't care. That's it. Although she did block Jana on Instagram over it. Come on, Jay. No one likes a try hard, especially ex-wives. We still love you, though.
Good for her.
I'm not sure how many conservatives remember Brittany Murphy's death. She died in December 2009 from pneumonia. She collapsed in her bathroom and was taken to Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, where she died. She also had legal drugs in her system because she had been dealing with a cold or respiratory infection or something. It was super weird. Even weirder, a few months later in the same house, her husband, Simon Monjack, drops dead, also from pneumonia. The health department tried to say maybe it was black mold in the house. Brittany's mom said absolutely not, and then eventually agreed maybe it was. But then Brittany's father had a sample of her hair tested independently, and it revealed that she had been deliberately poisoned by heavy metals.
What the hell?
Now there's a new documentary coming out October 14th on HBO Max called What Happened, Brittany Murphy, which shows her final days and her husband's supposed shady past.
Actress Brittany Murphy has died
Media
at the age of
paparazzi
32.
surrounded the home that she shared with her husband, Simon Monjack.
Simon took her away. He made sure no one could get to her.
Hi, my name is Brittany Murphy, and I go to Herbert Hoover Middle School.
Brittany was so wonderful. There was nobody else like her.
There was kind of a sweet, childish, lost quality that she had that just breaks your heart.
Since we're on the topic of strange deaths, huge news this week. According to Fox News, a team of specialists who investigate cold cases think that they've identified the Zodiac killer. Where are all my true crime lovers at? This is huge.
One eye open when I'm sleeping. One eye.
There's a team of more than 40 former law enforcement investigators, journalists, and military intelligence officers who call themselves the case breakers. Not only do they think that they identified the Zodiac, they think that he's responsible for a different murder hundreds of miles away that was never even linked to him before.
Breakers, a group whose website claims to be made up of retired law enforcement and military members, claims to have cracked the code in letters the Zodiac killer wrote, identifying the killer as Gary Francis Post, who lived and worked as a painter in Groveland but died in 2018. The group alleges the man is responsible for the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. In 1967, Riverside police received a handwritten letter that led investigators to believe the murder was connected to the Zodiac. But in 2016, investigators received an anonymous letter from a person admitting what was written was a sick joke. Today, Riverside police are still investigating Bates' murder, but are not connecting it to the Zodiac killer. Meantime, police in Vallejo sent CBS 13 this statement regarding their Zodiac killer case, the 1967 murders of Michael McGow and Darlene Ferrin, telling us the case remains under investigation. They add they are unable to confirm or deny the validity of the reports. Jim Jacks has spent his career on the Zodiac task force, working to identify the infamous killer.
There has not been a lot of new information developed over the last several years that I'm aware of.
And we made over a dozen calls to the family of the man this group has identified as that killer, but no one answered our calls.
What do you think? Did they get him?
Who can never be sure?
Extraordinary.
Okay, and now speaking of true crime and catching bad guys, today's episode of The Spillover is out. It features former state and federal prosecutor and Best Case, Worst Case co-host Francey Hakes. She talks about what it's like to go after the most evil people from a legal perspective, if the FBI is a total lost cause, and discusses her specialty of crimes against children. Subscribe to The Spillover right now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. This episode is the best way to start your weekend, I guarantee it.
And if you can believe it, it's a Friday once again.
Benjamin, it's your time to shine.
I said certified free. 7 days a week.
This week's Freak of the Week is really up to you. Is Molly Ringwald the Freak of the Week? You gotta decide. Shut up! She went on Andy Cohen's Sirius XM show and said that she hasn't watched any of her John Hughes movies with her youngest daughter because of the sexism, racism, and homophobia that she feels they're filled with.
There's elements to those films that I find homophobic. On the other hand, they're also about people that felt like outsiders. So they speak to a lot of people who feel, they're complicated. And I feel like that's what makes the movies really wonderful. And it's also something I wanted to go on record talking about, the elements that I find troubling and that I want to change for the future. But that doesn't mean at all that I want them to be erased. I'm proud of those movies and I have a lot of affection for them. I mean, they're so much a part of me.
Here we go again. It's like she's trying to make sure it's out there that she's publicly disowned them, even though she's like, well, I'm not saying cancel them, just that they're totally racist and homophobic. Can we pause and talk about how problematic Secret Life of the American Teenager was? That acting was a crime. Maybe Molly is just jealous that she hasn't been relevant since the 80s. And Long Duck Dong totally stole her thunder, and she knows it.
What's happening, hot stuff?
You've seen The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink. What do you think? Aren't these movies staples for understanding teenage angst and the problems that we all went through in high school? Is Molly the freak of the week for this? Go to hell! No! Okay, that's it for this week, Wormies. But before you head out for the weekend, tap this heart on this episode. Tell me if you think Alex and Sophia are getting the old band back together. Does the Brittany Murphy talk look interesting to you? And is Molly Ringwald the freak of the week for not enjoying her own classic films? Share this episode to your stories because I thought this one was super interesting. We're back Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific because we are off Monday for Columbus Day. Yup, we over here still call it that and appreciate what he did. So now you guys have more time to make sure that you're all caught up on the Spillover and POPlitics episodes. Don't miss them. I'm watching you, just like Marky Zuck. Just kidding. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is POPlitics. Support POPlitics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there at POPlitics.